Good morning, everybody. The Committee on the Budget and Government Operations Subcommittee on the Chicago Recovery Plan is called to order. Pursuant to applicable law and my determination that attendance by remote means is necessary because an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the declared public disaster, health disaster caused by COVID-19. This meeting is conducted by video conference. We'll now have a roll call to establish a quorum. Please note that your yes or present response will be deemed a yes vote when this quorum roll call is used as a reference vote for later items. Please unmute your phone or your device. Vice Chair Martin.
Present.
Alderman LaSpada.
Present.
Alderman Hairston. Alderman Solowski Garza. Alderman Rodriguez.
Present.
Alderman Burnett.
Alderman Burnett is here.
Alderman Irvin.
Yeah, Alderman Irvin is present.
Alderman Cardona. Alderman Cardona. Alderman Wagasback.
Present, Chairman.
Alderman Wagasback's present.
Cardona is present. Alderman Wagasback.
Present.
Alderman Nugent.
Present. Good morning.
Alderman Smith.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you.
Alderman Smith.
Alderman Osterman.
Present.
Chairperson Dowell is present.
Sawyer's present.
We
Scott
have
is present.
members of the subcommittee and all of those aldermen who are here that are not members of the subcommittee, your attendance has been noted.
Alderman David Moore is present.
At this time, we will begin the public comment period. Out of respect for everyone's time, each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Pursuant to Rule 58, public comment will be limited to 30 minutes. We have 4 speakers this morning, and we will begin with Joshua Coakley.
Chairman, did you get Alderman David Moore?
Alderman Moore, you're not a member of the committee, of the subcommittee, but we have you identified as a member of the Budget Committee who's joined us this morning. Joshua Coakley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joshua Coakley. I'm the External Executive Director for Target Area Development Corporation, which is a violence prevention organization in Auburn, Gresham. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Yep. So you want me to proceed with the 3 minutes, ma'am?
Your 3 minutes is ticking already. Keep going.
All right. All right. So good afternoon. Yes, I'm just really want to speak on behalf of several things that's happening in the communities we serve, which is Auburn, Gresham, Chatham, and Inglewood, and East Garfield. So first of all, I would like to give a shout out to the CP4P initiative for the city calls that take place twice a week with over 26 organizations that's in collaboration to end violence in our communities. Also, Target Area has deployed outreach services in all the 5 communities that I mentioned. We have increased our capacity to more boots on the ground in some of the deadliest communities that's been hit. So we have seen a significant decrease over the last 4 months. We're 11 homicides lesser than we were last year. So collaboration with different partner agencies like Teamwork Inglewood, Target Area, working also with the alderman's office, staying in constant communication, making sure that we're doing what we need to do to move forward. Also, we have professionalized the work of outreach through the city colleges, where we give 144 hours of training, where the guys are now learning different things like trauma-informed care, behavioral health, organizing, and so many other opportunities that wasn't given previously to Outreach Star. So the work has been really professionalized. We're very intentional with our working relationship with CPD. Also, we have doing our work with Safe Passage, which we are now contracted to work with more than 16 different schools in the city of Chicago. So Target Area has continued its lead work for over 25 years, since 1995, being one of the first leading Black organizations leading and organizing. So it's my pleasure to continue this work and continue this collaboration with the city of Chicago. So I look forward to working with the public safety members of the city as we continue this working relationship. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Coakley. Our next speaker is Kara Crutcher.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My name is Kara Crutcher. I'm a civil rights attorney, a lifelong Chicagoan. I've lived on every side of the city at this point, and I have the immense privilege of working as legal counsel for the youth-led group Good Kids Mad City. Good Kids Mad City has been doing deeply innovative work in mobilizing young people to promote peace across Chicago neighborhoods. A significant portion of the COVID relief discretionary funds were invested in the Chicago police, and true, safety is certainly an important concern for the city, but we really believe it's time to look into new solutions to the violence the city is dealing with. Good Kids Mad City proposes the passing and funding of the Peace Book, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, maybe some you haven't. This is a proposed piece of legislation that is visionary, it is empowering, and it will pour substantive resources into Chicago communities in a manner that is so overdue. Before I pass to my client, Nathan, I'll add that we have a beautiful one-pager infographic about the components of the Peace Book, which I'm happy to email out to everyone. Nathan, you want to jump in?
Yes. Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Hi, my name is Nathan. I'm a Good Kids Mad City. I'm 16. I'm in the CPS school. I know for a fact if y'all investing those federal dollars into the Peace Book and giving it to youth and opportunities to work and build peace in the hood, it would drop. I personally know kids locked up for carjacking and murder right now. And I know if they had resources and support, they would have made better decisions. Youth, please pass the Peace Book to our safety. I know pass it, and I not pass it over.
Thank you for
Thank
that,
y'all
Nathan.
for letting me speak.
Appreciate you, Nathan. Those are powerful words. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kofi Adamola. I'm an adult advisor with Good Kids Mad City. I appreciate the brother speaking earlier from Target Area. I think that's exactly what we want. We want to expand out violence prevention work, but violence interruption isn't enough. We need to build a culture of peace and investing those federal resources and other city resources to go towards real, comprehensive, holistic violence prevention, which touches families. We know since 2020, sadly, over 1,739 people have been killed and over 7,519 people have been wounded. That's almost 10,000 people directly impacted by gun violence. Yet those people don't have real trauma-informed care. They don't have free mental health services. They don't have guaranteed food and housing security. So just like you all did an excellent job of passing the basic income, we're providing families in low-income neighborhoods with $500.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kofi. Our next speaker is Lori Crowder.
Good morning. My name is Lori Crowder, and I'm the Executive Director of ALSO, the Alliance of Local Service Organizations. We serve Chicago's Northwest Side with violence prevention services. We work in Humboldt Park directly and in the neighborhoods surrounding Humboldt Park to provide safe homes and safe streets. I'm here today to tell you about a story about violence reductions that we've seen in 2021 in Chicago, which may sound surprising because we talk often about rates of violence increasing. But today, down significantly in the neighborhoods we're serving. And I want to thank you for your role in helping make that happen and create the community-based infrastructure to support safety and healing in the neighborhoods we serve. In 2021, rates of violence spiked. We know that story. But in the neighborhoods we're serving, with your support and with the support of the state, the city, the county, all shootings were down in also neighborhoods by 15.9% in 2021 when compared to 2020. Non-fatal shootings were down by 18.9%. That's almost 20% reduction. And those reductions didn't happen by accident. They happened because of an architecture of support within my agency and across the city of Chicago. And I want to thank you for supporting that architecture and helping make that happen. The architecture that I'm referring to is Communities Partnering for Peace. Communities Partnering for Peace has 14 partner agencies that work in collaboration with Metropolitan Family Services as a fiscal agent, and we employ 4 strategies for violence prevention in the neighborhoods that are hardest hit by violence, hiring people who have transformed, who positively transformed their lives, they're given back to the community, they live in those communities, and we are providing around the clock, with your support, around the clock gun violence prevention and intervention first responders. We're connecting people who need help with the help they need. We're providing case management and wraparound services, and we are providing professionalizing, as other speakers have said, the street outreach profession through the Metropolitan Peace Academy, which helps provide sustainable professional employment for people. So what happens is we are serving people in those neighborhoods, and those people who positively transform their lives become hired to help others do the very same thing. Because of your support, we're able to continue doing that work. I'm very hopeful about 2022 and seeing more violence reduction gains in 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Crowder. Our next speaker is Michael Allen.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you this morning about the work of Together Chicago. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Together Chicago, which operates on the near west side, as well as several other communities around the city. It's been said that more is done together and that we are better together. And that is certainly true when I think about the story of Together Chicago and how we have collaborated by invitation with Communities Partnering for Peace. So grateful for that network of practitioners of violence reduction and the increasing of thriving communities. And there is so much good that happens when we collaborate and work together. There's the sharing of best practices, the sharing of resources to serve community members who are at risk of gun violence and poverty. There's a central programming, evaluation, a central accountability system, oversight, training of violence prevention and intervention. I can tell you that our 8 outreach workers who have participated in the CP4P Peace Academy have upped their game and their effectiveness on the street in both preventing and intervening in the violence on the near west side. The University of Chicago Crime Lab has created a portal in conjunction with the City of Chicago and CPD that tracks all the violence statistics in the city. And according to them, our organization on the near west side from January through the end of September, in partnership with CP4P, we were responsible for a 40% reduction in shootings and a 60% reduction in homicides. And we're very grateful for those outcomes. We also have access to legal aid and trauma-informed counseling services through CP4P. Again, we're just grateful for the support that the city, the county, and the state has given in terms of the financial support that funds CP4P, and through CP4P funds these 14 partners, of which Together Chicago is one. And so again, through CP4P, we are doing more together and we are better together, as is the communities we serve. Thank you so much. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. And our last speaker is Robert Ruggiero. I may have mispronounced your last name. If you could repeat that. Robert?
Good morning, Alderman Dowell and members of the committee. My name is Roberto Requejo, and I am the Executive Director of Elevated Chicago. We are a coalition of community leaders and organizations building a more equitable Chicago using a great asset of our city, our public transportation system. And over the past 5 years, my organization has worked closely with the Mayor's Office, the Department of Planning and Development, Housing, and other departments in the creation of Chicago's first ETOD policy plan. We also co-convene with the Mayor's Office the Equitable Transit-Oriented Development Working Group, which brings together city departments and community-based organizations representing dozens of neighborhoods across Chicago, from Auburn, Gresham to Logan Square, from Homan Square to Albany Park. In order to build a truly equitable policy plan for TOD, we formed a working group jointly with the Mayor's Office, DPD, DOH, CDOT, CTA, and other agencies, and we invited usual suspects like government, developers, think tanks, and unusual suspects like artists, environmental experts, and public health practitioners. We also invited and compensated community leaders from neighborhoods across Chicago, and all this was possible thanks to a partnership with the Mayor's Office, DPD, and Department of Housing, as well as our community foundation, the Chicago Community Trust. The city started early implementation of the policy plan, selecting and co-funding 11 pilots in neighborhoods from Chatham to Rogers Park and from Garfield Park to Washington Park. And we are thrilled now at the possibilities of the new federal funding through ARP. Last year, $100 million for equitable transit-oriented development were committed by the Department of Housing, and then another $10.2 million allocation was created for ETOD, and there is also another $150 million for community development and ETOD provisions in the affordable requirement ordinance were included too. There is a lot of momentum right now, and under the leadership of Commissioner Cox and Deputy Commissioner Nina Idemudia, trust has started to be rebuilt between community-based organizations as we prepare for the introduction of a new ordinance regulating TOD. So the TOD is truly equitable. And we're also very excited at the deployment of hundreds of millions of dollars going to the communities that need them the most, including homes, grocery stores, health clinics, civic centers, and more next to transit. So we look forward to an improved and increased collaboration with the City of Chicago and with the Department of Planning to pass this ordinance together, and also to develop a city that works for all in the form of equitable transit-oriented development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Requejo. Also want to acknowledge Alderman Hairston and Alderman Savlosky Garza, members of the subcommittee have joined us. Also, for part of the record, the committee received written public comments regarding the use of the ARPA funds and suggestions on making those funds available for youth services, violence prevention, supporting mental health and jobs for our young people, addressing the root causes of inequities in communities, that these are all investments that should be made in our city, and that all comments that we received from the Budget Committee were sent electronically to everyone. This subject matter hearing is pursuant to the establishment of the Subcommittee on the Chicago Recovery Plan, which has the jurisdiction over matters concerning data and reports on the Chicago Recovery Plan initiatives and their expenditures. No votes will be taken today. As you all know, there are 13 topic areas included in the Chicago Recovery Plan. Last month, or in February, we covered arts and culture and special events and housing. Today's recovery plan topics include community development, youth opportunities, and violence prevention. This morning, we have our budget director, Susie Park, and our commissioner from the Department of Planning and Development, Maurice Cox, Commissioner Brandy Kanazi from the Department of Family and Support Services, and Commissioner Dr. Allison Arwady from the Chicago Department of Public Health. We are also joined this morning by a group of panelists to discuss community development, youth opportunities, and violence prevention. We've asked each of those speakers to limit their comments to 5 minutes. We'll start with community development, and our first speaker will be David Doig from the Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives, followed by Megan Hart from the Local Initiative Support Corporation. David, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks, Alderman Dowell. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, that we continue to be encouraged with the progress, particularly on the south side and the far south side. Many of you are probably aware of our work in the Pullman neighborhood. We're now starting to do work in Roseland, the community to the west of Pullman, and we've gotten good support from our local elected officials, Alderman Beal, as well as the city. And so we've got a number of pieces that we're working on with that, including the Roseland Medical District, looking at developing a new grocery store in the community, as well as working with Reverend Meeks and Salem Baptist Church on developing new homes. In addition to that, we've gotten good support from the city around our United Power initiative, which is focused on the west side. We've been working with Lawndale Christian Development Corporation and a number of the groups on the west side. And our goal there is to build 1,000 new homes on the west side and 1,000 new homes on the south side. So we'll break ground on that initiative probably within the next month. The first 100 homes will be close to Douglas Park, just to the west of Douglas Park. And the city has been very supportive and creative in allocating both TIF funds and other funds to help with the site improvements, which overall makes the homes more affordable. Those homes will sell all in for about $250,000, which will create many home ownership opportunities for new home buyers on the west side. So that is all going very well. And then in addition, we are under construction for a new community center in the North Austin community. The city was very generous in working with us on selling. Some of you might be familiar with the old Glidden Paint Factory at Bloomingdale and Laramie. If you haven't been by there recently, we have a 140,000 square foot new community center, the North Austin Community Center. We're working with By the Hand and Grace and Peace Church to develop that. That will open in August. That'll be the largest indoor recreation center in Northern Illinois. It will be anchored by a full-size soccer field, as well as 4 full-size basketball courts. So very excited about that. The city's been very helpful and supportive in working with us on that new development. So that's a quick update. Alderman Mitz, I see, has just joined. So that's a product of Alderman Mitz's hard work, and we're excited to cut the ribbon on that in August. So overall, I have good news, and I think overall it's been very positive. And again, we appreciate the city's support in working with us on these various projects. That will, I guess, conclude my remarks, Chairman Dowell.
Thank you for your comments this morning, David. Thank you for being here. Our next speaker is Megan Hart, who's the Executive Director of the Local Initiative Support Corporation of Chicago.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and the subcommittee. Appreciate the opportunity to talk today. I'm going to talk broadly about community development and why it's so important as an initiative, as a framework for investing in. But first, I'd like to explain who LISC is for those that don't know. LISC is a national organization established in 1979. We're an intermediary, a community development finance institution focused on community development. And through our 38 local offices, a rural program, and LISC other entities, we work with a vast network of community-based partners to make investments in housing, businesses, jobs, education, safety, and health. But I come to you today in our work in Chicago communities and as a member of a coalition of organizations that LISC has been working with and that have been stalwarts in the community development and workforce development landscape in Chicago for decades. This is the One Chicago for All coalition. It's 30 organizations representing 26 diverse neighborhoods with a combined population of more than 1 million residents. And though the neighborhoods face different challenges and needs, the vision of the One Chicago for All is united. I just like to give a shout out to all of the organizations that are in the initiative. It's Clarice and Associates, North Lawndale Employment Network, Greater Auburn Gresham Development Corporation, Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council, Austin Coming Together, Network of Woodlawn, Chicago Commons, Near West Side Community Development Corporation, Central States SARE, Jane Addams Resource Corporation, Northwest Center, Southwest Organizing Project, Bickerdike, Center for Changing Lives, Instituto del Progreso Latino, Enlace Chicago, CARA, Garfield Park Community Council, Logan Square Neighborhood Association, Teamwork Englewood, Near North Unity Program, the Resurrection Project, Quad Communities Development Corporation, Lawndale Christian Development Corporation, Metropolitan Family Services, New Covenant Community Development Corporation, POA, North River Commission, and the Safer Foundation. And I bring those organizations up because we are united in the importance of investing in community development initiatives, plans across the city. And the background in community development, what is community development? By definition, community development in America is an organized, purposeful, self-help activity. It's a process, it's a methodology, but it's also an industry. And Chicago leads the nation in community development and setting the chart more recently on how community development happens. And a lot of times we sort of rely on the federal government to do many things for us, which we would best do for and by ourselves. And I know a lot of the elected officials on this subcommittee and within Chicago have worked with the partners that I just announced in the projects that they work on, but also in the plans that they put together. So what does community development mean? Community-led is best. And I'm going to quote my friend Darnell Shields from Austin Coming Together. When people feel heard, they have power. That power then becomes motivation to get and stay involved. And the way we do that in Chicago is through community plans. Community plans are a way to empower the whole community. These plans are a tool for building equity. And so as you think about, as you consider investing in community development, we just ask that you consider prioritizing community-led plans, most of which you've led or been a significant participant in. A couple examples of things that have come out of community plans most recently are Austin Eats initiative, strengthening Austin's food access infrastructure, Reclaiming Southwest. Dave talked about it a bit in North Lawndale. It's happened and started in Chicago Lawn as a response to the foreclosure crisis and its devastation. The plan and projects stemming from these plans are prime examples of just how powerful community-led investment can be, especially for areas historically disenfranchised and most impacted by COVID. So as you consider ARPA funding and how it gets deployed, we ask that you make sure to engage community in the overall planning and prioritization, that you rely on community to be the experts on what is needed in communities. Please ensure there is a broad plan created and supported by the community. Almost every community hardest hit by COVID has one, whether it's a quality of life plan, Elevated Chicago, CMAP, other grassroots plans. They exist in communities, and looking for them and lifting them up would be the request. And build off of what progress has been made or is in process. Plans already exist, but so do projects and ideas to implement them. Alignment of ARPA to generally what's happening in communities just isn't enough. Investing in a new idea or project led by someone outside the community sends the signal that community members are not the experts. So as you consider the deployment, if I may be so forward as to suggest funding to continue to invest in the community infrastructure, the organizations who continue to create and implement plans, and newer, smaller organizations that can become part of the fabric of the strong community landscape that is in Chicago. And also using the funds to close the financial gap on community projects from these plans. There are options to do this. Setting aside a pool of money to fund these projects to bring them over the finish line, potentially creating a shorter path to financing for the projects, knowing that there's a short window for use of ARPA funds, but maybe partnering with CDFIs or other lenders to pre-structure capital stacks, combining ARPA funds with loans and other capital, so full financing is available for projects.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to move on. We've got a full agenda today. We appreciate you being here. We'll move on to comments related to youth services. We have Matt DeMatteo from New Life Youth Centers, followed by Tony Diaz from After School Matters.
Thank you. My name is Matt DiMatteo, Executive Director of New Life Centers of Chicagoland. I just want to say thanks to City Council for your leadership and for local investments in community-based nonprofits. We believe that hyper-local approaches are needed to create solutions to the challenges we're facing. New Life Centers walks with young people and their families, builds community through mentoring, education, sports, peacemaking, and food distribution. And by investing locally in violence prevention, we've been able to grow and impact more families and strengthen our violence prevention networks. I wanted to tell a story of one of our young people, Alex, who started with us when he was 10 years old. He started receiving mentoring, again, thanks to investments from DFSS and the Mentoring Initiative. He got involved in our sports and community building work, started playing basketball, thanks to investments from CP4P, Light in the Night, our Reclaiming Public Space work. And then unfortunately, in the middle of high school, Alex became a victim of gun violence. But thanks to investments in victim services, we walked with Alex through that difficult journey. Then Alex was a senior as the pandemic hit. His last 3 months of school were spent online. He missed his prom, he missed his graduation. But thanks to wraparound services and educational supports, we were able to get him across the finish line. And then one of my favorite stories in the pandemic is Alex and a group of 15 young people in Little Village started providing emergency food supports for Little Village and the entire city. And so now Alex, we were able to hire him full-time, and he leads this food distribution network called Pan de Vida, Bread of Life. And Alex and his team have fed over 2 million people during the pandemic. And thanks to investments in emergency wraparound supports and food distribution, we were able to build this infrastructure, and we'll have a new food distribution hub that will open in June in Little Village. Now we have over 20 young people who have come through our programs who are on staff full-time working, whether that's Jasmine, who started as an 8-year-old in our after-school programs, graduated college and is now leading those after-school programs. Anthony Montoya, who came to us with a gun case through the juvenile justice system, was able to get off probation and now is mentoring full-time in Little Village. All of those stories, Alex, Jasmine, and Anthony, are fruit of investments made in this work. And so just the link of youth development and violence prevention and intervention. Thanks to those investments, we were able to expand to over 400 mentoring matches now. We provided e-learning and after-school programs now to 125 kids. We provide safe spaces and healing for over 2,500 young people through sports and Light in the Night. And then we expanded our peacemaking and street outreach initiatives into multiple other neighborhoods and continue to see it grow by adding victim advocates and case managers as well. These are all resources and investments that were made through city programs that have now created a stronger infrastructure in the neighborhood. To close, I want to say a few things, especially in regards to the ARP dollars. First, as we continue to heal, we need each other. We need all of us to come together across neighborhoods, city departments, nonprofits, and neighbors. I will highlight that the social service sector across the city has been stretched extremely during the pandemic. Nonprofits and government have worked around the clock to serve our city. Thank you for that. We need to care for the men and women out on the front lines and help heal the healers. Investing and supporting them is key. This is a unique opportunity to care for them. We need to invest in local-led neighborhood groups, especially Black and Brown-led, and help support them as they grow. We cannot make these resources hard to get, which is difficult to deal with city, state, federal dollars. So I want to highlight that making them as accessible as possible with the least amount of red tape. We need to continue to invest in networks that we have. It shouldn't be an either or, but a both and. Groups like CP4P, Communities Partnering for Peace, are a network of local groups reaching their neighborhoods and also brought together with this comprehensive training academy and support. So let's continue to invest there. And then I'll highlight, we need to be careful with these dollars as they're only for a few years. In some ways, it feels like we're playing with monopoly money. If we build an entire system and network around them, when they're gone, we risk a large part of our social support network collapsing. So let's invest wisely. We have a lot of amazing youth development and violence prevention intervention groups across the city. Let's continue to support them. Let's grow and build the ones that are developing and continue to build the beloved community here in Chicago. Let's do this with a sense of urgency. I just buried 8-year-old Melissa Ortega a few months ago, so the time is now. Thanks to City Council, Alderman, and team. Let's continue to heal together. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. DiMatteo. Tony Diaz, After School Matters. Mr. Diaz, you're up.
Looks like my microphone wasn't working. So can you guys hear me?
Now we can.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to speak with you today. My name is Tony Diaz, Deputy Program Officer at After School Matters. Just to provide a little bit of background on the organization, After School Matters is the leading provider of high-quality programming to Chicago teens during the critical after-school and during the summer. Our project-based programs in the arts, communications and leadership, sports, and STEM are led by industry experts and provide Chicago Public High School teenagers a pathway to progress in skill development, social-emotional learning, and independence. Our equity-based approach provides teen participants the opportunity to earn stipends, allowing us to funnel resources into divested communities. 96% of our participants identify as people of color, and 80% live in high poverty neighborhoods. Over the past 30 years, After School Matters has engaged more than 350,000 teens throughout the city of Chicago to proven long-term outcomes. And our most recent data shows that 91% of participating freshmen are on track to graduate. 93% of participating teens actually graduate, and then nearly 3 of 4 participants enroll in college. In the midst of the global pandemic and through entirely remote programming, we were proud to be able to provide nearly 24,000 teen program opportunities throughout fiscal year 21, giving teens a safe space to meet remotely with their peers and mentors and earn a stipend as they gain new skills and explore their areas of interest. Over the past year, we have been able to return to the in-person and hybrid program model for many of our programs, fostering emotionally supportive program spaces for teens when it matters most. We look forward to increasing the proportion of our programs taking place in person following continued state and local guidance. And although we are proud to have provided thousands of transformative opportunities for teens each program session throughout the pandemic, there still remains an unmet need across the city. Historically, we receive far more applications than available program offerings. And as we adjust to a new normal following the COVID-19 pandemic, opportunities for young people to grow and develop in spaces where they belong are more important than ever. Our latest research shows that participating teens are continuing to face serious challenges, including food insecurity, financial hardship, stress, and lack of access to technology. However, findings also suggest that high-quality relationship-based youth development programs help teens thrive despite the difficulties they face by imparting a sense of belonging, buffering them against hardships and stress, and contributing to increased feelings of hope. Throughout the pandemic, we have been able to pilot innovative programs to respond to unprecedented needs in our communities. We developed a partnership with the Adler University for telehealth referrals for individual teens and their families, group counseling, and the development of instructor resources as part of our deepened commitment to promoting mental health and racial equity. We would encourage the city to prioritize the emotional and mental health needs of teens as we consider future uses for ARPA funding. We have also been working with the Greater Chicago Food Depository and World Central Kitchen to distribute nearly 200,000 donated meals to youth and families since March 2020. Addressing the continuing nutrition and health needs of Chicago's youth should remain a critical priority for the city. ASM has also worked to mitigate the academic harms brought on by the pandemic. In summer 2021, After School Matters established a new pilot program, which is called the ASM Challenge, in partnership with CPS to support students' academic growth and credit recovery needs by making it possible for them to explore their interests with the guidance of a mentor and earn money at the same time. The pilot was developed to serve teens in some of Chicago's most underserved communities. And this fall, we continued the pilot with CPS to offer teens the opportunity to earn needed credits towards high school graduation, explore college and career options via engaging skill-based projects, and earn a monetary stipend. Initial findings indicated high levels of attendance, growth in critical 21st century skills, and higher likelihood of passing a credit recovery program than peers who did not participate in these challenges. As the city considers effective uses of federal recovery funds, we'd encourage more investments in innovative, evidence-based, and integrative programs that support the social, emotional, and academic development of Chicago's youth. Your support is crucial as we work toward our vision for an equitable society in which all youth have the support they need to achieve success. On behalf of our young people in Chicago, I ask that you continue to invest in youth by providing additional support and funding SEL-driven after-school and summer programs to help teens thrive in the face of this unprecedented adversity as they seek to gain critical skills and prepare themselves for college, work, and beyond. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to this conversation about the ways that our city can support opportunities that inspire and provide for Chicago's young people.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Our last two panelists are speaking on violence prevention, and we'll start with Levon Stone Sr., Executive Director of Activist. Mr. Stone. Mr. Stone, are you here? All right, let's start with Dr. Lance. Oh. Mr. Stone, you're on mute.
Am I on mute now? Alderman?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for this opportunity. Thank again, Alderman Matt, Alderman Matt for this opportunity. I'd like to start by saying, unlike some of those other organizations that spoke on violence prevention before me, Activist was put out of CP4P based on getting our own appropriation from the state. I would like to also add that unlike some of those other agencies, I'm a product of that environment who's changed his life, was a big gunshot victim 30 years ago, changed my life, went back to school, got my bachelor's and my master's degree, worked for an organization, and then had the opportunity to build his own foundation and organization, which is Activist. I would also like to say that we're working in 5 hospitals. This last year alone, we sent 2,600 patients. The year before that, we seen 3,100 patients. We seen both those amount of patients while the pandemic was going on. We never stopped our work. We were on the front line. We're working in 7 communities, and those 7 communities are Washington Heights, Washington Park, Greater Grand Crossing, Douglas, Grand Boulevard, and Fuller Park, and West Pullman. The other thing that we do is we've done, just last year alone, we did 19,000 one-on-one meetings with high-risk individuals with our case managers. We've done 544 mediations with high-risk individuals. Actually, we're serving 703 participants. With our state appropriation, we were able to partner and help build up 23 grassroots organizations. Those grassroots organizations is in partnership with Activist, have worked in 13 of the city, 13 communities in the city. Neighborhoods in the city. Those neighborhoods, two of the partners working in Auburn Gresham, one is working in Chatham, one is working in in Douglas, one is working in east on the east side, one is working in three is working in Inglewood, two is working in Hyde Park, one is working near west side, one is working in the North Lawndale area, one is working in Roseland, four is working in South Shore, two is working in Washington Park, and three of them is working in West Inglewood, and one of them is working in the Woodlawn area. The names of some of those communities are, partners that we're working with was Advocate for Change, Beyond Athletics, ex-cons for Community and Social Change, Future Ties, Giving Others Dreams, the Gordy Foundation, Grand Boulevard Prevention Services, Hyde Park, Arts, Hyde Park Neighborhood Club, I Said What I Said, Major Adams, the Restorative Justice Program, the Second Chance Initiative, the support group, Think Outside the Box, True Star, the Work Foundation, Access to Tennis, Youth Peace Center for Roseland, Blessed Child, and Neighborhoods Network Alliances. All those things that we're doing, we've not received no direct funding from the city. We've asked for direct funding for the city for the last 3 years. All the work that we're working on is city-based. What I'm asking for opera money is for two things. One of them is to help build grassroots organizations with indigenous folks that come from the community, and also to impact our program that we created with the Northeastern University. Last year alone, we had 30 high-risk individuals that work in the community, register and take classes at Northeastern. And with that, we've had a success rate. We're advocating and asking the city to support not only our hospital work, but our community work, and help us build up our community partners, those 23 partners that's indigenous to some of those communities. With that, I like also saying that we also be on that twice a week. We're on the citywide call with violence prevention with CPD. We also is on the housing call with the city weekly for housing sustainability. And with that being said, I yield back the rest of my time. If I haven't looked at the time, so I don't want to go over 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. You're just right at the limit, so it worked. Our last speaker is Dr. Lance Williams, who's the professor of educational inquiry and curriculum studies at Northeastern University. Dr. Williams.
Good morning, Chairman Dow, and to all of the distinguished aldermen and other leaders in city government and everyone else that is on the call. I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to be here with you this morning. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm happy to proceed or to follow, just say not proceed, but follow my brother Levon Stone, CEO of Activists. I think his comments will make what I have to share with you as a so-called, I don't like to refer to myself as an expert, because I think we all are experts on what's going on in our communities, our respective communities. But as a professor of urban community studies who has studied the dynamics of violence and its impact on the most marginalized communities for over 20 years, individual that writes and publishes scholarship in this area. Also as an individual who for over 30 years have served as a youth violence, so-called gang outreach specialist for over 30 years. I have that practical experience along with just personal lived experience. I live in Washington Park. My wife and I have raised our 7 children here. And as you know, Washington Park has had its fair share of violence and gangs, but we're here and I have skin in the game along with my family and the rest of us here. I will say this, as studying the city's plan to combat violence, I think the most glaring thing about the plan is that structurally, it is a very sound plan, makes a lot of sense. I really love the focus on social services, the call for investment in communities most affected by violence, programs like Invest Southwest. Those things are really great. The thing that really sticks out to me with that plan is that it lacks what we would call a tangible price tag, so to speak, to make that plan actionable. So, you can have a plan, but if you have not placed the resources behind the plan to make it actionable, it really has no impact, right? And so that's one of the things that stands out to me. We know, I think the gentleman from Together Chicago had mentioned the crime lab. We know that in our city, unfortunately, gun violence is costing us anywhere between 2.5 to maybe even $5 billion a year in cost. So whatever money we're investing now is just a drop in the bucket of what is needed to combat this problem. That's one of the things that I noticed in the plan, that it lacked the heft, the financial heft to really address the magnitude of the problem. And then I've also, Vaughn just mentioned earlier, it's just to be honest, when I looked at the invitations to participate in the city's gun violence planning, I was appalled at the number of people that were excluded from the process. When I saw activists was not invited, I couldn't believe it. We can't be serious in this work and only invite certain groups to participate in the planning process. It's something that we're going to have to do a better job of. I've heard the groups talk about their work and working together. That's great, but it's got to be a comprehensive working together, not an exclusive working together. And then there needs to be an equitable distribution of the resources. To be realistic about what's going on right now in this city, the major violence prevention initiatives are pretty much all controlled by white men. Black and brown folks are being locked out of the leadership positions. Now, we're working in those spaces, right? But the senior level ultimate decision makers are essentially all white men. And there's something wrong with that. There's a lack of equity in this space. And if we're going to be serious about solving the problem, we have to address that. We're going to have to immediately find leadership at City Hall that can garner the resources of all agencies, bringing all resources together to combat this issue. That's something that we need to do right away. We need to, in the short term, we have to invest, again, keeping in mind a couple of things. Keeping in mind that this is a $2.5 billion issue. We're going to have to invest more money in this as it relates to immediately increasing the funding and capacity for street outreach and hospital response. You got to have much more money to stop the bleeding immediately. We need these bodies. We need outreach workers, hospital responders on the front line 24/7, especially in the hotspot areas, so that it is not always a reactionary type of a response. And these dollars, to be fair and to be equitable, have to go through Black and brown, specifically Black-led organizations, because 85% of the victims and the perpetrators of gun violence in Chicago are Black men. So when you have a cadre in this city, we have a cadre of individuals like Vaughn who have advanced degrees, they have lived experience, they have professional experience, yet you don't see any of them in leadership positions. And all of our organizations have to go through one of the white-led organizations in order to get dollars. That just doesn't make sense, because we have the capacity to do these things ourselves. And the individuals that are most affected by violence are looking at us. And when they go into these programs and they see that the ultimate decision makers don't look like them, they don't take this work seriously. So it's hard to engage them when you say, hey, bro, come on, we're going to try to help bring you up out of this. And they see that you have limited capacity to really help them, that you got to go check in with somebody from outside of your community. It's not fair, and it's not realistic. So I will say that in closing, those are some of the things that we can do in the short term. The long term, we're going to have to, invest more in human development, housing, mental health. We all know that. We need to fix community high schools, making them equitable so that kids have a chance to get a good start in life. And last but not least, there's a missing component to this. And this is a reason that Black and brown folks need to be in leadership in this work. The biggest missing piece in our violence prevention work is cultural responsiveness. A lot of this shooting that's going on between these young brothers in the streets is an identity crisis problem that can only be solved by Black men, brown men, Black women, brown women, working with these young men to help them get a better sense of their identity. This is not an issue of gang anything. This is a cultural problem that's got to be solved by folks of color in leadership positions, not in marginalized positions. So thank you so much for the time. And I look forward to any of your questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. We will now have some presentations, and then we're going to get to questions. I want to acknowledge Alderman Napolitano and Alderman Cardenas. You have your hand up. I know that you're here. We've got your attendance. Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, ma'am.
Alderman Rodriguez, I see your hand up. I'm sure it's a question, but I will get to you and call you first after we have our departmental people speak. Director Park.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman Dowell and Vice Chair Martin, and members of the subcommittee on the Chicago Recovery Plan. I wonder, can we pull up our deck? Hang on one sec. Oh, thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Before we get into all of our topic areas, I wanted to remind everyone just on the administration side that we have chicago.gov/recovery plan. All things around the Chicago Recovery Plan are on this website, and as we get more information and have more data, we will continue to add to this. So this is really a one-stop shop. Our treasury reports, funding opportunities, resources for our residents and businesses, our upcoming dashboard and quarterly reports will all be on this website. So just a quick reminder to members of the subcommittee to continue to visit the site, and we will continue to update that with information. Next slide. In summary, just as a reminder again, as we talk about the Chicago Recovery Plan and our budgets, you see here these are many of the investments that we've talked about today, that we talk about often, all the way from affordable housing down to tourism and industry support, our central government services. This is just a breakout of the Chicago Recovery Plan budget. Next slide. Just to provide a summary of what we are talking about today, the community development budget, which I know each of the departments will delve into further, is about $166 million. It, as you see here, is primarily bond funded. So it's about $136 million in the bond and $30 million on ARP. Next slide. The youth opportunities bucket is about $65 million. It is fully ARP funded. And so I know we'll hear more about that today. And then violence prevention is our third topic. It's $85 million. It is also primarily ARP funded as well, which is on the next slide. Thank you. All right, moving to the next slide, please. Just a real quick reminder, I know part of the resolution that we are required to do reporting. Our first report that we are anticipating, oh, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So our first report that we are anticipating will be submitted on April 30th. So it is quarterly. We are matching that up with the quarterly reporting date for Treasury. So at the end of the month following the end of the quarter, we will be also submitting our quarterly report to the subcommittee. As part of that, we will be posting that report on the Recovery Plan website. We are also creating a dashboard that will also provide a lot of information that will continue to build as we go. But these are just screenshots of what we're working on. I'm happy to work and speak with members of the subcommittee on thoughts, and we will continue to involve and improve this as we get more data. But the next couple slides are just quick snapshots of the type of things that we're looking for, that we're looking to report on. This includes, breakdowns within the broad buckets. The next slide goes into different, programs, what categories they fall under, and then next slide. And then also, how much has been obligated or paid. Again, these numbers are for demonstration purposes. They're not the actual numbers, but then we will be able to show kind of, what our progress is, how much has been obligated and expended to date, and what's remaining on the whole CRP. With that, I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Cox oh, and then the last slide, I'm sorry, is our tentative subcommittee schedule. I do want to also flag that our next meeting after today, which was scheduled to be May, is now moved to June 1st. So just to let members of the subcommittee know that the next meeting will be June 1st, and we'll take small business and workforce support as well as assistance to families. With that, now I will pass this to Commissioner Cox to really talk about the community development overview.
Thank you, Susie. Good morning, Chairman Dowell and subcommittee members. I'm pleased to brief you on our department's framework for the Chicago Recovery Plan resources. that we managed through our department. I'm also joined by Nina Edamundia, who is our new Chicago Recovery Plan Director, and she's available to answer questions that you may have. Next slide. DPD will be stewarding approximately 237 million of this 1.2 million in new investments that our neighborhoods will see. Our work is going to be centered around the equitable economic recovery of Chicago neighborhoods. And I'd like to brief you on our community development initiatives specifically during this briefing, and I'll be coming back to you again for another briefing to share what is the evolving work around small business and workforce and community climate investments. Next slide. So community development. These are in the form of direct brick and mortar grants to support neighborhood enterprise. It also involves vacant lot reduction through new strategies for environmental review, maintenance, and beautification. It involves ETOD grants around our CTA and Metra transit lines. The fourth category is community wealth building pilots that invest really in new models to build local wealth. Next slide. Regarding the community development grants, which represents about 54 million in bond, we are using our Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant framework that we have developed over the years to support local commercial, mixed use, and some light manufacturing development opportunities. And it's important to know that these grants are going to be available citywide. And so we've been marketing and promoting them across the entire city geography. We put out our first application on December 24th of last year, the first round. The first round closed in January of 31st. A second round was opened up and it closed on March 10th. Those two rounds have solicited over 500 applications. We're in the process of reviewing round one applications as we speak, with hope of making an announcement by the end of April. I would note that the third round is going to be a rolling deadline with the last closing in August. So there'll be ample opportunity for communities to access these resources. Next slide. The next category is the vacant lot reduction. Some of you may recall the planning department did a March 1st council briefing on some of our strategies here. This really represents a large portion of the resources, 82 million in bond, 5 million in ARP. We are going to tackle the entire inventory of city-owned parcels. So over 10,000 lots will be reviewed for their environmental conditions, which is something we've never been able to do before. We are going to take at least 100 plus lots as demonstrations of what clean and green could look like. And our hope is to prepare at least 2,000 lots to be marketed for sale to residents. Really important in this process is trying to understand what the community opinions are and directions are about vacant lots. And so we have put together a survey for the community's thoughts. You see a sample here. Which of the following opportunities should the city prioritize for vacant city lots in residential areas? And the sale has been a big outcome. We've gotten almost 2,000 responses to this survey, and we continue to solicit people's opinions. We are doing this in first environmental review of about 1,000 lots per month. So far, 3,216 pins have been reviewed, and about 60% of the lots have been cleared for potential sale. So our hope is that we will introduce to City Council in September a new program design ordinance. Our hope would be to finish this environmental review of all lots by October, and then have a new land sale application process open for your constituents to launch in November. Very ambitious, but this is what I think we've all been waiting for, and the resources, the CRP resources are allowing us to finally do this work. Next slide. Equitable transit-oriented development and technical assistance. This is about $10 million of ARP funds. The Plan Commission adopted a new equitable transit-oriented development set of policies, and we hope to give out direct community-driven grants for initiatives around our transit infrastructure. We were able to pilot an ETOD program last year that provided technical assistance to community groups that had ideas. In this particular effort, we hope to marshal $8 million for micro grants. This could be pre-development and large grants for catalytic projects around our transit infrastructure, and about $2 million in technical assistance as well. Our next slide. Community wealth building. We are dedicating $15 million in ARP funds for community wealth building. This really is to begin to pilot the kinds of technical assistance and organizational assistance that community groups need to build local wealth. So this has to do with cooperatives, limited equity housing strategies, community land trusts. We are probably, this is the one where we're in the process of formulating, and council's knowledge of what communities are seeing on the ground is going to be extremely helpful as we design this strategy. The hope is to be able to launch a series of pilot programs this summer and be able to make awards in September of 2022. Next slide. And I'm thrilled that we have been able to build our implementation team. Nina Edamundia is our director. Sophia Carey, who has been involved in NOF, is our senior program manager. We have websites for all of our programs already up and running. And we look forward to working with you on making the most strategic use of the ARP funds across the city. Thank you, Chairman Dow.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Commissioner Kanazi.
Chairman Dowling, good morning to members of City Council. I'm going to present to you on the violence prevention and youth opportunities. For this first bucket, we're going to focus on youth opportunities. Next slide, please. For youth opportunities, we have $65 million that is broken up into 3 categories: expanded youth employment, the Chicago Youth Service Corps, and the My Shine, My Future community expansion. Next slide, please. So just want to ground everybody in youth opportunities that the Department of Family and Support Services provides. We have here our youth program pyramid intervention. And so this just shows basically from the bottom up what we have. First, at the very bottom is you have youth that are economically disadvantaged, that are ages 6 to 24, but these are young people that are already engaged in programming. We just want to make sure that we keep them engaged. They may come from low income communities or have, families that our ESL. In the second category, which is slightly above that, is the youth who are at risk, who are aged typically 10 to 24 years old. These are young people that may be academically off track. They may have low school attendance, but they're still in school. And so what we want to do is before they have any more type of disciplinary infractions or justice involvement, we want to prevent and stop them through programs. Later through this presentation, when we get to prevention and intervention supports, I'm going to come back and talk about the youth with complex needs and youth at the highest risk of violence involvement. But what you're going to see for the employment portfolio that we're going to talk through are the young people who are at risk or who are economically disadvantaged. Next slide, please. So for our youth employment opportunities this summer for One Summer Chicago, we have three main buckets: Chicagobility, Chicago Youth Employment, which is SYEP, and the Chicago Youth Service Corps. Chicagobility is our signature program for young people 14 and 15 years old. They're not old enough to work yet. They're not 16, but they may feel that they're too mature for summer camp. And so this really is a chance for us to take 14 and 15-year-olds, make sure that they get exposed to career development in the workforce. And so they go on field trips, they meet with different individuals from various occupations in the career sector. It may be IT, it may be healthcare, but it really just kind of whets their appetite and exposes young people to what is possible for a career so that when they turn 16, they can matriculate into our youth employment program. These young people will work 20 hours a week for 6 weeks and they'll earn a stipend for $450. And so this year, we're really pleased that we're able to increase the number of young people and support 1,240 young people for Chicagobility. Our second program is the Summer Youth Employment Program. And so this is what most people are familiar with at DFSS and our traditional jobs program. This program has a youth coach and an employment coordinator. Our goal here is really to keep young people engaged and make sure that their 6-week experience doesn't stop there, right? That we are making sure that one, they either come back to work with us the following summer and that they think about career opportunities year round. This program, I'm happy to report with the ARP investment, we will be able to take young people to $15 an hour for minimum wage. Last summer, we were at $14 an hour. The program is 20 hours a week for 6 weeks. And so throughout this program, young people have an opportunity to earn $1,800 for the summer, which is really important, especially for young people going back to school. And then last is our Chicago Youth Service Corps, which is our signature program that really came out of the pandemic. This occurred back in 2020 when a lot of young people came to us and said, you know what, every school is virtual. A lot of after school activities weren't occurring in person. And so we created a program, kind of siphoned it off from the youth employment program for young people to engage in a civic leadership program. And so these young people, they participate in cohorts of 20. And so they design engagement opportunities in their community based on their needs. And so previously it had been a 6-week program. Depending on funding, we would be able to kind of cobble together money to extend it throughout the year. Really happy to report that this program is going to now be year round. So it'll be 40 weeks a year. We're able to support 880 young people and they will earn $6,900 for the year. Next page, please. Just to make sure that everyone understands what we've done in the RFPs that were released for these new RFPs is that we've set a target population that agencies must recruit 50% of their young people from our target population. So either individuals with disabilities, children or young people who speak English as a second language, and young people who are homeless or unstably housed, those in the foster care system, and our option schools with CPS and our level 2 and level 3 schools, as well as young people who are justice involved out of school and out of work. We really want to make sure we're targeting our resources for the young people who are most in need. Currently, the One Summer Chicago application is open. The website is onesummerchicago.org and it closes June 10th. I would ask all council members and everyone on this call to really support young people applying for the application. And just so everyone understands, the program runs this year from July 5th through August 12th. On the right side, I've listed some of the metrics that we have in our RFP and our contracts that we will be holding our agencies accountable for. Just to highlight a few, financial literacy is really important for us. And so we've made that a priority. We also want to make sure that our young people complete the program. So for SYEP, you'll see that we have that 95% of youth will complete the entire 6-week program. In the Chicago Youth Service Corps, one of the metrics is that 90% of the enrolled participants will complete a capstone project. That's really important for their leadership and growth. And then in Chicago Ability, for our youngest workers, we have that they will complete a professional resume and get their state ID. Next slide, please. A new program that we are supporting this year in partnership with the Chicago Park District Foundation is the Summer Kickback Series. And so a lot of young people have said to us that they want to be able to plan and design opportunities in their own community. And so this summer we are supporting 225 youth earning $15 an hour for 20 weeks or for 20 hours a week for 10 weeks. And so these young people will earn approximately $3,000 for the summer, and they will plan opportunities and events. You may have seen last year they did like snow cones, they did game days. And so this will focus on communities that are in the My City, My Safety priority communities. Next slide, please. And then just our plan for the My Shine, My Future expansion. With the team, we are working with an RFP that will be released this spring, summer, probably closer to summer, for programs to begin in the fall, where we will not only support the Kickback Series in the 15 priority communities, but also have anchor orgs in each community that will provide support for young people and their families to provide wraparound services to make sure that youth have not only a trusting adult, but they are also able to have youth-centered spaces where they can get wraparound supports and connected to other resources. Any young people interested can always go to the myshinemyfuture.org website to learn more about the program. And I will hand it over.
Thank you, Commissioner Kanazi. Commissioner Arwady.
Good morning. You're able to see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. I'm here to give an update about the ARP specific investments in violence prevention. And I just wanted to start by saying a big thank you and shout out to all the aldermen who came out to the town halls. We've done 6 of them over the last week or two, getting a lot of input from residents, and have worked to really build, on a lot of your suggestions and recommendations. I'm going to hand it first actually to Tamara Mahal, who is the coordinator for the new Community Safety Coordination Center. Just as a quick reminder, this is really trying to take some of the lessons from COVID. Tamara led a lot of the vaccine operations coordination in terms of bringing together city agencies, working with state and federal partners, listening to community voice, and is playing a similarly important coordinating role in the CSCC. So the overall resources for community safety, separate from victim services, is at 45 million, 28.9 through CSCC and 16.1 through violence intervention. So I'll hand it to Tamara to talk about CSCC and then come back to talk about violence intervention programming as well as victim services.
Thank you, Dr. Arwady, and good morning to members of council. As Dr. Arwady mentioned, I have been appointed as the Chief Coordination Officer for Community Safety, overseeing the Community Safety Coordination Center. This center is really focused on bringing together and helping to coordinate violence prevention and community safety activities across the city's departments and agencies. And we have a few key initiatives that we're supporting in terms of the support that's being provided in the community. And then I'll talk a little bit more broadly about the CSEC as well. A big portion of this $28.9 million will go to support various activities that we believe are gaps within the city's current approach and are based on what we've heard from community, what is really needed. One is an announcement that was made on Monday that we will be supporting both reimbursement, but we'll also be providing cameras, lights, self-installed vehicular tracking devices to homes and businesses to ensure that they have security equipment that's needed to protect their homes and businesses, ensure their safety, but also aid police where able in criminal investigations. And that's the Home and Business Protection Program. That includes both the rebate portion where we reimburse, but also several $1 million that will be going to ensure that low-income residents and those that live in communities that experience more violence are able to be supported with those types of resources. We also have heard quite a bit, both from community residents, but also as we continue our engagement with aldermen about the need to really strengthen Block clubs, civics, neighborhood associations, and really improve the streetscape. So we are focused on efforts that we can utilize to incentivize new and existing Block clubs to strengthen those neighborhood relationships, but also coordinating to ensure that we're proactively addressing issues on the streetscape. One of the other things we're working on that we've heard consistently from our community-based organizations is the need for more community-level coordination. So we are providing and building up community area networks across several communities that will ensure that folks like violence prevention providers, some of which you've heard today, have better referral pathways for direct services so we can ensure that those that need supportive services are able to access them. But if we go to the next slide, overall, what the Community Safety Coordination Center is really focused on is really ensuring that both on a strategic level, but also on an operational level, our departments are working together to ensure we have a comprehensive, community-driven approach to violence reduction. And as Dr. already pointed out, much of this is based on the lessons learned from COVID. And if we go to the next slide, there we go. What we learned was that we really need to be hyper local. And for us, that really does mean, especially across our communities that experience the most violence, working at the block level to provide support to residents. We also need to make sure that we're implementing a data-driven, but also an evidence-based approach. Understanding what has worked well in other cities that could be applied here, but I think most importantly, understanding what works well here that could be expanded with more supports. But we're also here to ensure that we can rapidly respond with resources when the community needs it. Resources can be a lot of different things. It could be project management support, it could be supporting events, and yes, it can be funding as well. But we're really here to make sure that across different areas of public safety, infrastructure, and social services, the city has a coordinated approach to ensure we're maximizing our impact in community safety. And I'll hand it back to Dr. Arwady to talk about that $16.1 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Next slide. So I wanted to just make sure that all of you had an understanding that it is new just in the last few years for the city to be significantly funding street outreach work. If you look back over the last decade or so, CDPH was funding a small amount of street outreach, but you can see that there were years where we had $0, there were years where we had $500,000. 2019, the last budget under Mayor Emanuel was the first time that we saw a noted increase to 1.5 million. But you can see even prior to the ARP funding, we've had significant new and I think critical investments in this space. We also heard from many of you the need to think differently and creatively about who and how we fund. So you'll see that in 2020, for example, We used a lead agent model with a little bit of direct funding. And then last year did another RFP that let us not only fund organizations through more of a lead, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but also more directly funded organizations. We do require directly funded organizations to use our same evaluation partners, our same support partners, because a big part of the goal is to be coordinated in this work. And then for 2022, you see further increase, and that's where, you know, the extra funding from ARP is plugging in, both an increase in direct funding, as well as a new plan to do some seed grants. We've heard from many of you, and we know there are smaller organizations doing really, really critical work, but may not yet have the infrastructure to be able to handle all of the administrative things that can come along with this. So we're talking right now with county, state, some other partners around what that can look like. But I just wanted to make sure you had the context for the growth in funding and that this is new. Philanthropy has been doing this for years. Other folks have, but new for the city. Next slide.
Excuse me, Dr. Arwady.
Yes.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm noticing that you've got about 20 plus slides in your deck here.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't. It's an appendix actually, but I'll be fast.
Okay.
Yeah, I only have 4 slides. So so this is street outreach, just to get a sense of it. The dark blue, but I will speed it up, Alderman, are the community areas that have the current investments. And then in light blue are the community areas that are eligible for our upcoming RFP release. That'll be coming out in April, probably in the next week or two. And you can see again, going over the years, it's been not only an expansion of funding, but it has been an expansion of areas. And that is all based on where do we see the most victimization and the most violence in Chicago. So pleased to be able to expanding there. Next slide. In terms of who we fund now, we currently fund 14 street outreach organizations in 19 communities. So through CP4P, Communities Partnering for Peace, there are 9 partner organizations. That's the Alliance of Local Service Organizations, Breakthrough, and we heard from Lori Crowder up top talking about that, Breakthrough Urban Ministries, Claretian Associates, INBC, New Life Centers, that was Matt DiMatteo as one of the expert witnesses, Precious Blood Ministry of Reconciliation, Target Area Southwest Organizing Project, and UCAN. As of 2021 last year, in addition to that, we funded 5 community partners directly, Center for New Horizons, Envision, Together Chicago. We heard from Michael Allen up top there, Youth Advocate and Youth Guidance. Then all of these organizations, whether they are part of CP4P or not, receive training, technical assistance through the Metropolitan Peace Academy. We're also really pleased that as they are looking to have new space and continue to support, a real focus on the health of this workforce. This is obviously a difficult work. We want to make sure people have mental health supports that they need, trauma-informed care, et cetera. And so really wanting to think about a wellness center for street outreach workers. And then finally, our evaluator is the Northwestern Neighborhood and Network Initiative that does the evaluation. And in the appendix, you can see the example of really showing the decrease in violence that has been seen in the initial part through the CP4P collaborative. Next slide. And then the last thing is victim services. Go ahead. So $10 million of ARP is going to victim services. And just to make sure we all know what that is, in the same way that after there has been a violent event, we know that there is a routine connection to police investigation. Our goal is that when there has been a victim of violence, in addition to that routine connection to police, there is also routine and coordinated offers of support services to both the direct victims of violence as well as the indirect. And we want to make sure that we're responding to multiple forms of violence. When we had very limited funding in this space, a lot of the focus was on homicides only, but we know that shootings, homicides, stabbings, domestic violence. There are children who are witnessing this. And a big part as the city, as you know, is working to not just build clinical bricks and mortar mental health services, but really getting those services out to community. This is an example of one of the types of services. And then finally, we want to make sure these victim services work is coordinated with street outreach workers and across both city and non-city funded providers. And so Chicago Survivors is the longer term organization that we work with that does citywide in response just to homicides. But then we also fund Breakthrough Urban Ministries, Center for New Horizons, Chicago Survivors, INVC, New Life Centers of Chicagoland, UCAN, and Universal Family Connection. And we'll be looking to further expand and really double down on this work. That is all that I have, Alderman.
Thank you. Commissioner, thank you, Dr. Arwady. Commissioner Kanazi, can you finish up on the youth violence prevention program the department does? Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about our youth violence prevention, and I'm not sure if you all can see me. The next program we're going to talk about is our justice diversion. That is $10 million. And so that is really for youth who are at risk, who may have complex needs, but are not at the level where they may necessarily have 8 or more offenses or severe incarceration. I'm going to let Lisa Hampton go to the next slide. Just note that as we talk about our justice diversion model, we're taking this from being in 6 police districts to now citywide. Lisa?
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Kanazi. Lisa Hampton here. I'm the Director of Prevention and Intervention for Youth Services Division. And as the Commissioner said, as we move forward in this new diversion model, we are taking the diversion model that exists throughout the city, that's operational, in addition to what is currently happening with the JISC, and being able to build out and enhance those services. So one of the things that we're looking forward to be able to do based on feedback from the council, as well as individuals in the community, is really focusing on increasing family engagement and supports for services. Just to level set for everyone, youth who are eligible for diversion are considered low level and low risk. And so we are talking about youth that would be eligible for station adjustments. And then the support would be up to 90 days or as needed, depending on where they are and where the family's needs are. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at in those enhancements of services is restorative justice practices, looking at mediation with young people, leveraging what CPD already offers in the form of peer jury, but really looking and hoping that community providers can enhance that and then wrap that once again closer around family engagement. The other piece will be linking individuals to a stronger network. And so this will be through an RFP competitive process. And as the commissioner stated, it will be citywide. And the goal is that each of those community providers or delegate agencies will be able to help build a stronger community network, not only with local police districts, but also with community members and youth. Once again, thinking about how do we ensure that young people in this short intervention will be able to have long-term supports and not necessarily be arrested in order to engage in those supports. The other part of that is we will be focusing in on ages 10 to 17. That is the ages that are identified through the station adjustment legislation. And then we're looking to serve approximately 1,000 youth per year. We're going to be looking at data in a very robust way over time and with our partnership with the Chicago Police Department and the Mayor's Office to really think about adjustments along the way. So right now, looking at the data and looking at what currently youth arrest who fit in the diversion category, that is what we're anticipating. And then there will be a research component to this work. We will be looking at the process itself, and then also thinking about and looking at evaluating kind of long-term violence impacts. And just to reiterate, this will be an RFP process. We are looking to release it in the fall. We are looking to release in the fall and having those new sites come on board in this new citywide model. Next slide.
So next, we're going to talk about youth at the highest risk of violence. And so those are young people who may have been incarcerated multiple times. They may have more serious offenses, including carjackings. For this program, we have a budget of $20 million. Next slide, please. And so with the addition of our ARP dollars, we have been able to expand our service coordination and navigation program. This is a pilot program that we started in 2021 through the repurposing of a number of our smaller prevention and intervention dollars that we received. And so we were able to come up with a robust model that really focuses on serving young people with the most complex needs. Last year, we served 659 youth. What we've been able to do is really take the program from young people in 6 communities to citywide, just to give some context for this. In order to be applicable for the program, young people have to fall into 2 categories, right? For category 1, they have to either be justice involved or they have to have experienced violence or shown signs of online bullying. And so for criteria 2, they have to be out of school or out of work. And so last year, again, we were able to serve 659 young people. Through the addition of our ARP funds, we are adding an additional 192, bringing it to 816 young people that we hope to serve annually. The new program has already started. So contracts were awarded in February 2022. You can see here the new agencies that we have brought on are Children's Home and Aid, Lawrence Hall, Precious Blood, YAP, YMCA, and Universal Family Connections. What's really important about this model is that young people have to want to participate in the program. It is not mandated. 2, it makes sure that with our navigators, we meet young people where they are. Our team is really focused on making sure that the life plan for these young people are based on what they need. And so it'll help them decide if they're out of school, we'll work to get them back into school. If they need a job, we'll be able to do that. One of the good things about being at DFSS and having other program areas within the department is that the youth team has partnered with the homeless division. And so in our homeless division, we have a flexible housing pool that supports homeless youth. And so we have referred 73 young people have already been referred for the flexible housing pool. And to date, 37 of those young people have actually been placed in housing. The remainder of those young people are either in bridge housing or on their way through the approval process. The last thing is that we bring our delegates together as a team to focus on active contract management, making sure that we're looking at data on a weekly and a monthly basis to make changes in programs with our delegates. It's not an aha, I gotcha, but it's what's not working, what are the strategies and tools that we need to do. We know from this program that it's really important that we're able to make sure that, young people travel and we're able to support that. Next slide, please. What you can see here in terms of the young people who travel, we realize that starting in 2021, you see in red where we initially had the programming. And so with the expansion of our ARP funds, in blue is where we've been able to expand all through the South and West sides. And we are really trying to be flexible because we know a young person may start, may live in a particular community, but may hang out in another based on, friends and activities that they participate in. So we really try to be flexible in working with young people through this model. Next slide, please. And then just as we think about, planning for the future, 2 things that we're really focused on at DFSS. One is building a year-long SYEP program. And so we're starting to have those conversations to make sure that we can support at-risk youth throughout the year for 40 weeks a year. And then the second one, just based on feedback we've heard from community members, is making sure that agencies that we work with directly or who don't work with but are in the youth space can receive training. And so we're looking to provide training not just for youth agencies, but also all of the nonprofit partners that we work with. So that is all Chairwoman, I'll send back to you.
Thank you very much to all of our panelists and to all of our commissioners. Thank you for that long presentation. We've been going at it now for about an hour and 40 minutes, and I wanted to get to comments and questions from our committee members and the members of the Budget Committee who are with us here today. But first, we're going to start with the Vice Chairman of this subcommittee, Alderman Matt Martin.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you all for the presentation, all this information. I kind of want to focus my initial set of questions on how much money we've spent to date on these programs, because I think it was initially outlined in the Chicago Recovery Plan, and then as we've seen really accentuated here, I think we've known for a number of months where we want to spend those funds, broadly speaking. And that's really great to hear along a number of tracks, especially when it comes to a lot of the youth-focused issues. So I really appreciated hearing from Commissioner Kanazi in particular where we were last year, how we're scaling up to this year. But I think what I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about is how much funding we're getting out the door right now, especially since some of these funds could and should be spent this year, but we know that there's a longer ramp, right? It's, I think, 5 years, just dating back to last year in terms of the deadline by which they need to be spent. So as I'm just looking at a prior slide for, say, community development, and we have what, a total of $166 million. How much have we spent to date out of that $166 million?
Well, I could start with kind of the financial piece of it, and then, definitely turn it over to the commissioners who may have a better outline of kind of the pace. And so, as you mentioned, Vice Chair Martin, this is a 3 to 5 year program. In terms of expenditures, I think a lot of the time that we are doing now on the front end, all the RFPs that you've heard are talking about, all that work is kind of the front end. We have roughly, 17 RFPs that are kind of posted and closed. That's worth over 200 million. So as those are executed, and those will get obligated at that moment, and then the work's going to start, and that expenditure, pacing is really up to the program. Right now, in terms of expenses overall, we have, the revenue replacement dollars for 2021, that's been obligated. So that 782 million has been obligated against our larger Treasury award. But in terms of the rest of the expenditures per se, they're right at the starting place. So, as the contracts get let and the work begins, like that's really where the funding piece is going to come into play.
Okay, and I assume with the dashboard that will be made available at the end of the month, we'll talk about that. Because again, on the one hand, that we do have a lot of planning that's underway, but also some of this is indicated in the slides was a continuation of what was happening last year. And I think there were notations, including, I think with the DFSS slide, that there was an RFP that was put out in August, award made in February. So I guess my question is, we'll see in that dashboard that's going to go live by the end of this month, how much has actually been spent?
Yes, and we'll be tracking that. So each quarterly reports, the first one, as I mentioned, will come out on April 30th. So we'll have that information by program area, by initiative. So we can track that, and you can see that.
Okay. Well, then I think I'll still go through kind of high level questions with each of the big buckets. So for community development, out of the 166 million, how much have we spent to date?
Is that a question for Commissioner Cox?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Martin. As I think I highlighted, you saw the dates that we issued the call for proposals. And we are poised to make the first recommendations at the end of the month from round 1. So those funds effectively will be then set aside and obligated. And then they have the period of time to execute their projects. And we, with regards to the vacant lot strategy, as I think I outlined, we are spending those funds down at a rate of 1,000 properties being reviewed a month, and that we will continue at that pace until October, until all of them are done. And so once again, I don't exactly when the checks are cut for them, but those funds are obligated, and we have a monthly timeline for spending them. So those are the two. Once we make the awards for the community development grants, those funds are effectively obligated, and then they have their period of time to execute on them.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask one follow-up question with that? And this might be, I'm not sure if it's a Director Park question or a Commissioner Cox question, but say, we're only going to deal with each of these subject areas once this year. And so say for housing, if I wanted to, like in June, see what's going on in terms of funds that have actually been sent out the door, but same thing with a number of the issues you mentioned, maybe the vacant lot program being a good example. Are we going to see a monthly update, a weekly update in terms of the figures in the dashboard?
Right now it's slated to be quarterly, so it will match kind of the the progress of the report, and kind of keep up with that pace. I mean, we could definitely talk in between, but we also want time to, like Commissioner Cox said, there's time between contracts getting let, funds being obligated, and then checks going out the door. So we want to be able to show that progress. Right now it is slated to be quarterly. And, the intention at each beginning of each subcommittee meeting is to, we can go through the reports once we get through this first one that's coming out at the end of April.
Okay. My last question for now, and I'll do a round two, Chairman, or at least please put me down for one, is for the 20 million for youth, I can't read my own handwriting, youth services. I know that we're talking about Chicago Ability, SYEP, CYSC. It's total of approximately 10,000 youth. I was wondering, out of that 10,000, how does that compare to how many were served last year, as well as the total need? Are we talking about 10,000 out of a pool of 100,000, a pool of 50,000, and then out of that 10,000, are we ramping up from, say, 5 the prior year?
Great questions, Alderman. So first, to answer your question, the 10,645 youth that we're serving this year, that's just DFSS without our partners, CTA, libraries, parks, etc. Compared to last year, for DFSS funded slots, it was a little bit over 5,000 youth that we serve directly with DFSS funding. In terms of the need, one of the things that we're also looking to for expansion is our corporate partnerships to make sure that businesses are also able to support and fund our young people through summer opportunities. We estimate right now somewhere between 15 to 18,000 slots with our partners, but we're still confirming the numbers of what that will look like with them. So don't have exact numbers for you just yet, but I'm working on it with our team.
Got it. And what would you say a ballpark is in terms of the total need? Like, I know we're not here, of course, but are we talking like how out of
it's hard to say.
How many is that relative to the total number that you think ideally you would serve?
That's hard to say because for the last 2 years, applications were down in terms of how many young people applied due to the pandemic. A lot of parents didn't send their young people in. So I don't want to necessarily, Rebecca, are you on? Do you know how many young people applied to the program last year? Well, we don't have her, Alderman. I think we may have trouble getting her, but I can provide that through the chair of how many applied last year.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful in just going forward, both at big hearings like this, but also just briefings and one-on-one conversations. I think a number of us would really benefit from knowing the entire scope, because Professor Lance, I forget his last name, from the panelists had talked about violence prevention broadly speaking, and how, in his opinion, what the city was doing was a drop in the bucket. I mean, I think we would all agree that we can be doing more, and we're on the path to ramping up. But it's also good to know what the ideal is. So if a program like Choose to Change, which CPS is helping spearhead, a number of organizations are working around, if they are targeting 1,000 students this year, but someone says 20 to 25,000 students by our internal metrics might be served, then that helps us understand both, okay, is 1,000 enough, but also how quickly we might need to ramp up. So I just want to put that in as kind of working backwards from those overall population goals.
Alderman Martin, my team just messaged me. It was 42,000 young people that applied last year.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, that's all for now. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Martin. Director Park, you mentioned that the city has allocated ARP funding for revenue replacement. How much was that figure? How much is it?
So what was approved for 2021 was 782 million.
And what have you replaced so far? And is that
We've obligated the whole amount. You know, I think the comptroller, of course, is going through year end and going through the audit process, but the whole amount has been obligated. That amount was the full set aside for just 2021 revenue.
And is that on the dashboard?
It will be. It will be when it's up and running, and it will be included in the report that's coming out at the end of this.
That's coming out in April?
Yes, at the end of April.
Okay. And then my last question, Commissioner Koch, you mentioned changes in the land sales process. Can you expound a little bit about how you're thinking about that now?
Yes, thank you for the question. As you know well, our efforts to get vacant lots into the hands of residents and people who can invest in them have been stymied primarily by the environmental review process. As an application comes in, we get an environmental review, you know, it comes back clean or dirty, and then we can proceed with the sale. This bulk review of environmental will allow us to distinguish which properties are clean and do not have to have a second environmental review process, which ones need more research, and which ones are dirty and are longer term. So we should be able to now say all of these clean lots are available for sale. And what we would like to do, because we've never been able to sell at this scale, is to really get input as to what's the best way to bundle and package these so that we can expedite the process. So we're in the process of designing that. We will bring a set of options. We will continue to solicit input from the alderman, and then hopefully have something that really is new. We would like that's going to be brought to you as an ordinance. And then eventually, we hope in the fall to launch this new and improved mechanism. So we will know what is clean. So all this question about is it clean or is it not? Can it be sold or is it not? We're going to have those answers up front.
All right. So are you, in your current thinking, thinking about removing, for example, the ANLAP program, or changing the negotiated sale process? I mean,
we think that there are going to be implications to all of these programs, tweaks to them, refinements. We are very open to understanding what might need to be changed as a result of this ability to cluster lots, but we haven't made any decision yet on that. But we do think that as a result of this new program, some things about these other programs are going to have to be refined and altered.
Well, I hope as you're looking at that, you're also looking at things like when we have to take back property because somebody said that they're going to do something and then they don't do anything, and then they sit on it for X number of years or months. And I hope you're also looking at the appraisal process so that we get fair appraisals in Black and brown communities.
Yes. And I don't know if Kathy Dickut is here, but there is also going to be reform to the appraisal process specifically to address the issue that you raised about how properties in Black and Brown communities are being appraised, their values being appraised.
All right, Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really, so time's going here, so I'll probably just make 2 comments if that's okay. I did have a series of questions that I wanted to ask, but I think a couple of the panelists are now off. So just in respect to the city's efforts to resource up violence prevention efforts and intervention efforts, you know, I really want to commend the field for adaptation and for just basically different ways of going about the work that's much more outcome oriented and has elements of evidence-based processes. You know, I started working in the violence prevention world here in the city of Chicago in the late 90s and have seen the growth, some would say the professionalization of the work, but certainly hearing from Pastor Matt DiMatteo, who does work in my ward, understanding their trajectory and the way in which they comprehensively approach violence prevention in our community and the way they've taken best practices learned from other organizations throughout the city through the CP4P process, but then take a hyper-local approach to implementing those best practices, but then also taking you know, local expertise to implement, you know, things that work here locally and that need to be focused on here locally. I think it's a best practice, and I'm glad the city is investing in those types of efforts, and I'll continue to be a fierce advocate for those efforts here locally, and for also that kind of framework citywide to have the sharing and best practices happen. The fact is, we know we need to also focus in on prevention efforts as well as intervening with our most at-risk individuals to really create a holistic approach. But, you know, that's just a start. You know, I kind of like feeding into my second comment, you know, I think we do need a comprehensive approach. It includes our police, but then it also includes our mental health professionals. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I still think we have a blaring hole in our city when I think about a non-police mental health first response. I think it's a best practice nationally that we need to incorporate here locally and figure out a way to do that. So those are really just two of my comments on the subject today, Madam Chair. And I think I'll just leave it there for now. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman LaSpada, followed by Alderman Smith, followed by Alderman Scott.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My thanks to you and Vice Chair Martin for the continuing work on the transparency and accountability around these efforts. We'll try to be brief. So my first question is related to how we promote communication and collaboration amongst the agencies that we're funding, because clearly in all of these community areas, there's great work going on. But I think what we're learning, particularly in Logan Square and Westtown, is there needs to be communication between the folks who are funding for youth diversion, for youth deflection, for violence prevention, for like economic development. Are there spaces or places in which the city is promoting that kind of collaboration between those we're funding through the Chicago Recovery Plan? And I'm not sure who is best to answer that question, but anyone is, I'll put it out there.
I can take a step, unless Dr. Arwady, you want to?
I mean, I was just going to say that, you know, coordination is the name of the game in a lot of ways here. Like there's been really a lot of amazing work. And I think where we're needing is to make sure there's not gaps in between the work. Like I said, we want this to be automatic and have the space for community-based organizations that know their communities to be doing that work, but in a larger structure. We do have, you know, regional focused meetings with the street outreach providers that include CPD, that are looking at data, seeing how do we need to address and change. And I think also some of the reasons that we've wanted, no matter how folks are connected, to make sure that they're pulled into the Metropolitan Peace Academy, into the evaluation, is to make sure that there are some some best practices that can be lifted up, and that we can not just that we can also support the outreach, the street outreach workers themselves, because again, like I said, really stressful job. So I think the coordination piece, and that's some of the CSCC, Tamara, if you want to add, is where this is at, and making sure there are not gaps.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that and say, I think that's the exact observation that we tend to hear from community. We know that at the community level, across so many of our communities, there are existing tables around violence prevention that include, yes, outreach workers, youth programming, mental health service providers, but that we also need to make sure that they're provided the support to make sure that, to your point, where we have street outreach, that youth diversion or other organizations are at that table, and that there's proper support. And so one of the things that we're working on from the CSCC's perspective, and are starting this in several kind of key focus communities, is really providing the project management support that coordination requires to make sure that you have someone who can help bring folks together, stay on task, and that can just be supportive of carrying that information back to the city.
Commissioner Cox, do I see your hand
Madam
up?
Chair, I just with regards to DPD, we are working with all of the related agencies as we put out RFPs. So DCASE, CDOT, DOH for our community development RFPs. But I would say as well, the Mayor's Chief of Staff has started weekly cabinet meetings where each department updates what the other department or sister agency is doing. So really, for the first time, we have a forum to know, much like you're learning, about what other departments are doing. So I think there's increasing alignment and knowledge sharing at the cabinet level.
And I think that's just to say, like, I understand how that is important. Like, I want to say, like, it's as important for that collaboration to be happening, like, at the 5th, 6th floor level as it is on the block level. But that I feel like is what I'm hearing from all of you as well. So I want to say, like, all of us with an ALD in front of our names really want to be collaborators and conveners with bringing our agencies together as well. I will have 3 more questions. One is related to contracting equity. And I'm really curious because Lance spoke about this as well, how we build capacity in terms of Indigenous leadership, in terms of smaller agencies. I have heard the frustration before, always a sub, never a prime, and that extends as much to, like, what we build in terms of buildings to how we build community infrastructure. And I'm curious, as we're thinking about procurement, as we're thinking about the RFPs around this funding, how do we turn an eye? How do we, like, make sure we have a focus on building local capacity with local organizations?
I can start, and definitely all the commissioners can jump in. I think that's a huge focus for us around CRP. As you know, Alderman, we did a readiness summit early in the year to just kind of lay the, here's how you incorporate, here are, documents, if you want to be a sub-recipient to federal funds, here's some of the numbers you need to have. I mean, it's really capacity building, as you talked about, in providing those resources. We have an initiative actually in the CRP that's also helping with capacity building and, how do we provide those resources so that we can, even to the smallest organizations, really be a part of this large CRP, all the RFPs that are coming out. There's a lot of thoughtful thinking around this and how we really provide that access, provide resources, even down to the nuts and bolts of, how do you apply, what's a good application for an RFP, all those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of work going into that and continues to go into that. It's a continual process, but it is something absolutely we're all thinking about.
I would just jump in and add for DFSS, what we really are working for is our cohort meetings to make sure that, our nonprofits are getting the support that they need. And so that they're coming together on a monthly basis to talk about their challenges but also through the work that we're working on with BACP, where they also have a capacity and a TA grant to support smaller organizations. So, it's not just about agencies who are large and well-known, because we find that sometimes they are stretched and they're not able to deliver as well as the smaller organizations are. And so I think part of it, Alderman, is making sure that they not only are aware of the opportunities, right, but they are also set up to succeed. And so what we saw through our One Summer Chicago RFP is that a number of agencies who had been sites, we actually encouraged them to apply because we were like, you can do this. And so we have seen some make the transition from being a site or a partner under an org to a lead agency.
And we've seen the same thing at CDPH. You'll note that on the violence intervention front, for example, we're taking similar models to what we did with COVID, where yes, there is a lead and we've got some subs within that, and some organizations prefer that in terms of not having to have as much of the administrative support. But then we also separately are funding organizations directly. And, some of that was feedback that we heard from Alderman. And we are adding with ARP the ability to do this seed funding, which pretty much means working not through traditional city structures, just honestly. But it's something that we've used previously with philanthropic dollars, where you've got small organizations to really get some funding, but also do that capacity building so that in the next iteration, they can, if they're interested, be a direct fund or can slide in under one of the leads. And we think that there is value, and we've heard from our partners that we fund in all different spaces that actually having a mix of these and really wanting to see organizations grow where they want to grow. And there are some organizations that just want to do the work and not have to deal as much with the direct administrative. And either way, we think that work is important and we want to support it.
And Alderman Laspada, I think I'm going to ask Deputy Commissioner Kathy Dickett to answer this, how we're building capacity in the real estate community.
Yes, hi, Alderman. So as part of the vacancy program, we will be revisiting things, Alderman Dow, like appraisals, and we have asked for consultants, and these are going to be consultants in the big space of real estate. And as part of our request for proposals, we have included in there specifically a task that they need to identify and team up with local real estate advisors, so that we're getting that local real estate expertise teamed up with, the big guys, so that when we look at appraisals, we're getting various kinds of information, various kinds of advice. And we're also doing that on a number of other task orders when we're doing large projects. The Inglewood line, for example, where we're specifically asking for the community engagement for the primes to look for the organizations in the community that are doing that work and have them team up with them. So that way they do not have to, they're not part of the MBE, they're not part of the WBE, they don't do all that. It's just another task that we're requesting the primes to do as part of their work.
And with regard to community development, I know Nina Edamundia has also been trying to look at the capacity issues in that space. Nina?
Yes, so like in the grant programs that we are doing direct to community members, we have added indicators on the back end when we're doing our assessment and adding points and subtracting points, where there's equity indicators based on data that will weigh an application more heavily depending on where they're located, if they're around other in low income or moderate income census tract areas. And so that's one way as well that we've been trying to prioritize equity, just standardizing across the board as we review applications when they come in.
Colleagues, I have appreciated the very constructive and programmatic feedback. Very comprehensive answers, though, too. And I feel like I have, for the moment, exhausted my time. I will send the rest of my questions directly to the, I know. I will send the rest of my questions directly to the departments. Chair, I appreciate the time and the meeting.
Thank you, Alderman Laspada. Alderman Michelle Smith.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I do want to thank all the speakers from the agencies and the city for really giving us this comprehensive and somewhat overwhelming report to try to get our arms around. So I'm just going to focus on one area, which is justice involved youth and the JISC. And first of all, I want to give a big thanks for the city taking on this health-centered approach to violence. I mean, this is something that has been talked about, and for us to actually be doing it is really spectacular. So my questions are mostly for Commissioner Kanazi. I think I'm saying your name wrong again. I apologize if I am. No, I'm all right with Kanazi. That's okay? Okay.
You're good.
So, phew. So my first question is, I guess I kind of want to know what happened in that first year of the SNAP program. To me, that's like the most important program, the one that's reaching out directly to justice involved youth who are homeless. These are the kids in a lot of a tough space. And I'm particularly interested in, do you have results yet from that first group of kids or young adults?
Got it. So you're speaking about the SCAN program, the Service Coordination and Navigation Program. So yes, we do have results.
Yes.
So let me just pull up. So one of the results is that 73 young people were engaged for housing.
Yes.
Of that, 37 have been referred and actually receive housing for our flexible housing pool. So flexible housing pool is made up of city and healthcare partners that together invest, because they realize that if you don't invest in housing, they're going to continue to clog the emergency rooms in the healthcare system. So the goal is to transition. So we've housed 200 young people. Of those, 37 were from the SCAN program. The remainder of those youth are either in bridge housing or they're going through the referral process. Second thing is, of the 659 young people that were served in 2021, 107 of those young people were carjackers. Of them, 100, of those 107 young people, they had been arrested 165 times. So good news is, right, that we actually are working with them and engaging with them. When we look at the types of support that they need, young people need access to jobs. And so there's been referrals to jobs, connections to food, either food pantries or connections with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, also wraparound services and case management. And so I'll say that it takes time. We have lost some young people who it's just hard, right, to pull them back from the life that they're used to, which is why making sure that we stabilize them and help them come up with their life plan is really important.
Yeah. So how long, of course you lost some, because this is a voluntary program. So
yes, ma'am.
How long in your plans do you expect someone to be engaged with this program? Is it as long as they want, or is it like, 3 months and done? What?
This is more of a 12 to 18 month program, but it's as long as it takes. So we're not saying after 3 months of serving you, we're going to let you go on your way. This is because it's a higher intensity, right? It takes more support, and we know that we're not going to get it right on the first try. And so that's why we've built it out. It's a higher cost per youth. So it's $7,000 to service a youth, compared to our enrichment programs for young people who are involved is more comparable to be $1,500. It's a higher intervention, but typically 12 to 18 months. I'm pulling up a slide that's in the appendix that you received. And so in terms of referral services, the referral pathways that we receive referrals from outside organizations is either from the agencies we work with, juvenile probation, other community-based orgs in the community, and some from the state's attorney's office. What we're doing this year, because last year was our pilot year, second year is the team is really focused on those referrals in communities to make sure it's not just the orgs who are funded that know about it, but other community orgs as well, and to make sure that we're streamlining that process to get better to reach these young people that we know need services.
So what are you finding that, I mean, I would think the hardest thing is just to keep track of the kids, that they stay in touch. So I don't know, so far, and I recognize last year was a pilot. And I'm sure, so what are some of the things that you learned and have you been learning in the pilot?
I'll start and then I'm going to have Samantha jump in. But one of the things we've learned is how taxing it is on the case workers because of the trauma that the kids see and how connected our case managers are to the young people. We sometimes have to pull back and take care of their health and mental health needs so that they're able to service the young people. Samantha, do you want to talk with the Alderwoman about some of our other learnings?
If we can keep that answer kind of tight, Commissioner.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Alderwoman, for the question. You kind of already touched on it. We have learned that this population is very difficult to engage. And so we work really closely with our delegate agencies to really help elevate strategies to keep youth engaged. So we have seen that has been one. We've also seen things around our criteria to see how, justice involvement and street engagement shows up differently, whether it's for younger youth or young women. And these are things that we discuss in our monthly meetings with our delegates that the Commissioner has discussed. Commissioner, did you want to wrap us up with anything else?
I think the information about young women who are justice involved, we've learned that the interventions are a lot different from them than the young men. And so just Alderwoman, we've also added, not through ARP, but through funding from the Justice Department, a GEMS program for young women to empower girls with mentoring to also help them who are going through the justice system.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I would love to have a longer conversation about this, but I know we're pressed for time. I just have one other question. I think you indicated that were something like 40,000 people applied for, is that One Summer Chicago?
Yes, for last summer.
So if you had another $10 million, for example, would you be able to actually service many, many more people in that program and others? Or is it, no? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
if you had more
do.
money, could you do it? Do we have the agencies to handle it?
So I think the agency capacity is something that we've learned over the course of the last 18 months is just their capacity to expand. A lot of agencies that we have had trouble hiring staff. There is a shortage nationwide of case managers. So I would be hesitant to say our agencies could handle it. I think one is I want to get them settled with their new awards for 22 and determine, what their expanded capacity could look like. But I think it'll take some time to get there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Alderman Smith. Before we go to the non-subcommittee members for questions, starting out with Alderman Michael Scott, followed by Alderman Cicho Lopez, and ending with Alderman Moore if no one else has questions. I do have one question for Dr. Arwady. Dr. Arwady, obviously, listening to some of the presentations today, many CBOs in Black and Brown communities feel locked out of the process of getting funding for the city. What is your department doing to address this problem?
Sure. So, obviously at CDPH, and I think particularly in this space, we are very interested in making sure that organizations that are, led by Black and Brown Chicagoans, are playing a role. I do want to highlight that in CP4P, for example, the majority of those organizations are led by people of color. We'd love to see even more of that, but I just want to make sure folks are aware of that. I also think this is where, like I was mentioning, with feedback, from you and others, we really have worked to diversify the funding that is available, recognizing that not all organizations are wanting to be part of some of those larger pieces. And so in late 2021 was when we brought on, the 5 additional directly funded organizations, and we will be bringing, like I said, there's another RFP coming out this month where we will again add delegate agencies and very much encourage and want Black and Brown led organizations to be applying for those funds. And then the seed grant work is something that, again, we see as the potential. We saw this with our Healthy Chicago Equity Zones, the COVID work, the ability to do some smaller funding awards to build capacity with some of the very small organizations, and then hopefully, you know, if they're interested, get them to a point where they can either be part of, for example, CP4P, or they can be a direct delegate agency. So I think there's a long way to go on this, but I think there's been progress, and I think there is real commitment to this.
So is it the city's policy that these organizations have to be a part of CP43?
No, no, not at all. And that's where I highlighted, like in what we fund now, there are 9 or so that are part of CP4P. And then we did 5 direct awards late last year. People could be part of CP4P or not. Some are not. And there is no requirement to be part of CP4P. Similarly, for the upcoming awards, the requirement is that anybody that we're funding, you know, work with our technical and sort of evaluation and support partners to make sure that things are aligned. But no, that is not a requirement, and we've heard that
right.
It's important to have that kind of flexibility.
And then lastly, related to the same topic, is there equity in the funding? So, you know, if you're part of CP43, you get a bonus or an incentive because you're part of that, or is the funding equitable, you know, depending upon, no matter what path you choose?
So I would say where you're looking at seed grants, those are smaller, you know, by definition. Those tend to be, you know, that may be, just to give you a sense, you know, that may be a $100,000 award as opposed to an award in the millions, for example. But then when you're talking about the funding that is going to, you know, either directly or through CP4P, CP4P is the original. You know, some of those are longer funded in terms of some of the investments that the city was making going back to 2019. And so some of them have had the opportunity to grow more, but we don't make a distinction there in terms of specific awards.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Arwady. I see Alderman Hairston, who's a member of the subcommittee, has raised her hand. Sorry, Alderman Scott. Alderman Hairston.
I will try to make this quick, Madam Chair. I just want to follow up a little bit more because I was really disturbed that out of all of the funding for violence reduction or anti-violence or interrupting or whatever, that there's not one Black agency. You know, and Dr. Arwady, we've had this conversation for a couple of years now. So can you explain to me why? Because I find it hard to believe that after all of these years, not one has been able to measure up. And when I can think of some that are not performing yet, they keep getting funded. I'm a lot irritated.
So I just want to, you know, one of the reasons when I was presenting, I was specifically calling out some of the people who, both on the expert witness side and calling in, you know, as public commenters. There were 4 or 5 of those folks, many of whom are Black, are leading organizations that CDPH funds in this space. So like, I'm just being honest with you. So in CP4P, I know more than half of the organizations are led by people of color. I mean, if you want us to get specific, we can, but
I do want to get specific.
Okay.
I really do, because
so, yep. So 7 of the 14 CP4P community, you know, groups are Black led.
And what's the monetary distribution for each?
They are, I believe, the same. There's no, it's not like a Black led organization receives less than a non-Black led organization.
I still don't know what the numbers are. And
Yeah,
we're not talking about Black compared to Black. We're talking about Black compared to white, to the lead agencies that have subs underneath them. You know, I get images of the NFL in my head, and you know, we don't do better, and we keep saying we're going to do better, and there are groups that are out there that are capable, and we just can't seem to get it together. And so I don't understand why.
So I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'm gonna follow up with you through the chair with the specifics. One of the reasons that I read the names of the organizations that we're funding in victim services and in street outreach are because I want to make sure people are hearing the specifics. And if it's okay with, I don't know the exact breakdown, et cetera, off the top of my head, but we can get you the details of that. And CP4P's network executive director is also Black. I mean, just to be specific about that. So we recognize.
Well, but whether the head of the organization is Black or not, the question is the relationship between the communities. It's the relationship with the communities.
Right. So,
and that's what outsiders do not bring, right? They don't have that connection. So, they don't know, Mrs. Johnson's son or grandson like other groups do. And I think that is the point that a lot of my colleagues have been trying to make over the years, that there are connections because people are from the neighborhood. They know the neighbors, and they start out with more trust than an outside organization coming in.
Yeah, I absolutely hear you. If it's okay, I'll follow up in the specifics, but in addition to CP4P, there are 5 directly funded organizations, community partners: Center for New Horizons, Envision, Together Chicago, Youth Advocate, Youth Guidance, with another 5 coming. And there are 8 victim service organizations: Build Inc., Breakthrough Urban Ministries, Center for New Horizons, Chicago Survivors, INBC, New Life Centers of Chicagoland, UCAN, and Universal Family Connection.
And which one of those are in South Shore?
I'm going to have to follow up on the specifics of the details, but South Shore is what, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe South Shore is one of the areas that is being expanded to with our 2022 investment.
I agree, but I've been hollering for 3 years.
And there's an RFP. That's what I'm saying. There's an RFP coming out this month to expand. South Shore is in that it's all goes in order of the violent, what we're seeing in terms of outcomes. We hear and know that there is need to continue to grow. And so in the expansion in 2022, there are those 6 additional communities. We want to fund organizations from and connected to those communities. We cannot fund them unless they apply. So please be encouraging organizations that you know and trust to apply for that RFP. It is an expansion, but it's building on work that we did last year in sort of the growth and then growing it again in this area.
Okay, and then last, I just lost my train of thought. I just lost it. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Well, the phone rang, and my eye went to see who it was, and then now I forgot my my line of questioning, because this was in a different direct. Oh, I know what it is now. So for those organizations that have not been performing and have been funded, what are we doing about those? Are we there? Several of my colleagues have complained again, and these groups still get funding and they're not effective.
So couple of things on this. One is I had my team kind of pull for me here a little bit that, UCAN, Target, Claretian, Public Equity, Breakthrough, Together Chicago, Project Hood, we all do have documented right now as being both Black-led and local to the community area. So I just wanted to kind of follow up on that.
Well, I think they just got somebody new. So what Claretian has been doing is, even though they haven't been making any progress, they keep hiring new people and putting new people at the head. Again, the problem is they have no connection to the community. And this generally is not what they have been in the business of doing. So what I see is we've got a startup group that has been funded for the last 3 years. You have had complaints from all of the aldermen in South Shore, and yet they have continued to get funding.
So South Shore, as I said, is in the expansion area for 2022, but let me actually answer the question
But
about what are
Parisians
we.
was supposed to be here already. They've been operating here. You just said that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, if it's, I don't want to misspeak, especially, you know, in a public forum. I'm going to follow up with you on the specifics of the organization, their funding, whether we know the, you know, what the organization reports the race or ethnicity of their leadership and board, et cetera, to be. And we will follow up on that. But on the point of how do we make sure that we're seeing outcomes, I do want to actually address that. So this is where working with, you know, the reason that I showed the graph I did at the beginning is that 2020 is the first year there was any serious funding from the city in this space. And then it's grown in 21, and with ARP, you know, it's grown both late last year and then, you know, heading into.
All right, so I saw that. I saw that, but
so
that
we're just now getting back evaluations from the early phases of some of this. And that's why N3, that's the Northwestern, you know, Andy Papachristos' group, in September of 2021, looked at, for example, the first 8 organizations that were in CP4P. CP4P is now 16 organizations in 28 community areas.
Dr. Arwady, my time is ticking.
Okay, so we saw fatal and non-fatal gunshot injuries among participants be 20% lower in the 18 months following participation, more than 30% lower in
and
the
this
24
is in
months.
South Shore, or is this citywide?
This is across the original 8 organizations in CP4P.
Okay,
We
but
also
this does
saw
not include South Shore, correct?
I'm gonna have to get back to you about the specifics, but let me just, I do want to.
No. I listened to your full presentation. My point to you is do not divert your answers to make it convenient citywide when I'm asking about a specific community, when I have been asking about a specific community, when my other colleagues that represent that same community have been asking the question. I don't want to know the numbers for other areas. I want to know for this community, and and yes, we're expanding, but this should have been on the radar a long time ago.
Thank you, Alderman Hairston. Your point has been made and has been made. I don't know why they can't hear this point. You've made this like 5 or 6 times since in the last couple of years. So we really do need to do something about that. Alderman Arwady, I'm going to just close here with this. One, we've been asking for data on the performance of CP43, and we haven't received that. I think the issue is also that we're not happy with the intermediary that the city has chosen to be over our communities, right? Who has no experience in the violence prevention space, really. And we are looking for a way to work with you so that other organizations can occupy that space with Metropolitan Family Services. They should not be the only one.
So, yeah, and that's where the new funding, we did not actually receive applicants for all of the funding that we put out outside of CP4P last year, which is part
of the differ with that because some organizations were not allowed to apply. So I'm just gonna drop it there and just have a conversation offline.
Understood.
Okay.
Please do look at the appendix because that gives the outcomes for the first 3,600 participants in the CP4P program. The breakdown in terms of race, ethnicity, the outcomes, the number of contacts from organizations. Again, this is newer work that the city is part of funding. And so we do look at this sort of across different programs, but please do take a look at that and let us know if you have additional questions. And again, we are taking that feedback and expanding. We already did last year and expanding further this year And there is not a requirement to be part of CP4P, but we hear from some organizations that not having to handle as much of that administrative piece. We saw this on the COVID side too. In some cases, there are organizations that do prefer that, and we need to be able to evaluate it across, regardless of how organizations connect in. We feel really critically about making sure that there is that accountability, and that there is the ability to evaluate where we make investments, where there are partners that are, that are having best practices that others can learn from. And that's part of the reason why we have those requirements, that anybody that we're funding is part of these collaborative, these collaborative ways to come together. Because I would like nothing more than for this space to feel more collaborative instead of competitive as there is additional funding, making space at the table for everybody that is doing this kind of work. But that does mean sort of different levels of funding and plugging in and seeing what our best practice is. But do look at the appendix, because there is, as street outreach has been more formally evaluated over these last couple of years, there is evidence that it works, and we see that from other cities. We're new in this space and growing.
Thank you, Dr. Arwady. Alderman Scott, sorry this is taking so long to get to you, Alderman.
Quite all right, Madam Chair. And I don't want to go down that route, because it's the same things that you were just talking about. What I would ask from Dr. Arwady is, in terms of the seed grants and who you're giving those to, and how people are kind of channeled into that, would like to have a conversation with you offline, because again, I have the same kind of problems on the west side, where we have organizations that are on the street doing the work, may not have the capacity in order to do so. Just actually had a meeting with Boxing Out Negativity this morning about some of those things. And what I would like to see is something similar to the R3 program that the state has stood up with, the residual cannabis money, where they give that money to folks who have not been in the space before, attempting to get them up to play. And I think that I see you work with them behind the scenes in order to make that happen. And so if we can find an agency that can do that, to help those smaller organizations make sure that their books and their data and all of those things are up to par, I think it would be very helpful for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're happy, we are still working on the pieces of that, taking some lessons learned from the state, from the county. This seed grants are specifically for organizations that are not funded in other ways, and they're to really grow that capacity and get the support in. And it's been something that we have been really, like I said, we've seen good progress and outcomes with that in other parts of the department, but it does mean using typically working through an organization, and then in turn there are those grants. But we're all about it, and would be happy to talk some more with you or with anybody as that develops.
I appreciate that. Commissioner Cox, would like to talk to you about land sales and just our plan to make sure that folks who are indigenous of a said community, and I'm talking about North Lawndale specifically, have an opportunity. I'm working with Kathy Dickett and was on the preliminary call around the change in land sales. The one thing that, again, I'm worried about is, one, when we're blocking off, because I know that they were talking about blocking off maybe 7 to 8 at a time and selling them. I just want to make sure that that community who is there, we're not selling them to outside developers, and making sure that community is thought about when we're selling those properties.
No, thank you. In fact, we know that one size cannot fit all. With regard to the new capacity that we will have to cluster lots, in order to access additional funding, DOH has a limit. So like eight lots will qualify those individuals for funding to be able to complete a project. That's a whole new sector of smaller scale, mid-scale developers. So what we're trying to do is, you don't have to be a community development corporation to develop in a local community. we need to build, we know that there's a pipeline of Black and brown developers who have been doing 2 flats, 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. We think we can get them to that threshold of 8 lots. But that is different than the community member who wants to do their first infill lot, and they're interested in 1 lot. It happens to be on their block. It happens to be next door. So yes, we're going to have to work with you, the aldermen, to tell us what you are seeing out there, so that we can tailor each of these programs specifically to address those emerging community developers. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been tossing around for quite a while that I haven't been able to get any root on is, we've done a lot of the dollar lot programs, and we've sold to a lot of homeowners that you may want the lot next to them or the light right across the street from them. How do we figure out how to cluster some of them and do development on those? Because ultimately we don't want, gardens are great, but ultimately we want houses next to them. And I believe if you own the lot next to you and you build on that, then you're more apt to have a son or daughter or aging mother or community member or family member who might have went out of town because they can't afford it to move back to the space that you have. And I want to figure out how we, and talk to Commissioner Navarro about it, but how we figure out how to empower those people who own those lots next to them to build. If we're talking about community wealth, the best way you build community wealth is through land ownership. And if we're able to put some houses on those lands, then I think it not only helps the community, but it also builds wealth within that community. And so would love to think about creatively how we do that and how we empower those people who own those lots next to them to make sure that they have the ability to build on those, and would love to use some of those dollars towards that, especially if you're going to have these lands already cleaned and make sure that they don't have the dirt on the infield that is contaminated or have the rocks or the base of the house there. If we can work on that, I think that would benefit the city as a whole. The other question that I have for you is regards to the grants that are going out. What are those grants called? Can you help me get
the Chicago Recovery Grants, but they have a similar profile of the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grants that we've seen traditionally.
So in those cases, what's the max allocation? Is it 5 million?
That's true. But obviously the funds, you saw how many millions are available. We're going to try to stretch those dollars, so the average grant will be much smaller than 5 million.
What do you think the average is going right now?
I guess Nina Edamundia, you might give, if you have a scan of what we're seeing. They're still in the process of being evaluated, but
yeah. Hi, this is Nina. I don't have an exact average for you yet because we are still finalizing who we're preparing for our finalists, although we're literally in the thick of getting that number down right now. So actually I can follow up through the chair with an average of the folks that we think may be our finalists, but that wouldn't be an accurate number until maybe a week or so from now, until we actually have those. And then of course, aldermen would be the first ones to know if those grants were given to people within their wards, and then we would notify folks who actually won the awards after that.
And Alderman Scott, the other thing is for all of the grants, the requests that are coming in, we are forwarding the full list to each alderman who had grants come in for their ward, so that you understand what the ecosystem of requests look like. And if you feel like you need to see that again, we'll be happy to forward that to you.
No, I've seen that list of the first preliminary folks that went in, and I'd be looking for the second wave that just went in. The one other question that I have for you is you said it's very similar to how Neighborhood Opportunity Fund is rolled out. The problem that I have with Neighborhood Opportunity Fund is, we get these folks who say, we got a space, we're ready to go, but then over 3 to 4 years, we still don't get them you know, stood up to do what they're going to do.
Yes.
So want to know, one, like, is there a timetable on putting this money into good use? If there is, you know, what is that? And then what do we do and how do we recoup that money from folks? Or does it sit in escrow when folks don't have it? Because, you know, we have the need is so great, as you know, for all of these folks. And what I don't want to have happen is we're sitting on 1 million or 500,000 or whatever that dollar amount is when we have a business that we know is ready to go and that we can give this money to, and they're ready to fly. Right. So one, you know, what is the timetable on making sure that they use these funds? How does that money get allocated back or reallocated to somebody else? If you can go through those for me.
Yeah, no, thank you for the questions. So because the American Rescue Plan dollars actually have an expiration date, they have to be spent by X date. That has given us a renewed focus on how do we deliver these projects in a timely fashion, because the money will have to go back to the federal government if it is not used. And we also know that the average time of entrepreneurs to deliver these projects often is beyond 3 years. So what we're currently doing is we're looking at whether we have to give them general contractor coaches, if we have to bundle these projects so that they become a larger contract for a minority-owned construction company. But we're gonna have to be really aggressive. This is generally not what planning and development does. We don't hold their hands and tell them how to get from the grant to opening day, but we are finding that that's actually what's needed. Mm-hmm. So we are reviewing our practices. We brought in a focus group of Black contractors, saying what do these folks need to accelerate their delivery, and they're giving us enormous insight. But it's going to require us to retain project managers for.
Yeah, I was going to say owner's rep. If we could have you know, a bunch of owners reps that can help them through all of those things, I think that would really help us. And then the other thing that I know, because it doesn't have to be a startup business, it can be businesses that just need this money, and making sure that we're allocating a lot of the funds towards those folks who just need to, not to open, but to reopen or to stay open. Because if that money is going to go and it has to be used in 2 years, we got to make sure that we have a plan to get them done. And that's the one thing about Neighborhood Opportunity Fund that does not work. And if we do this correctly, being able to take the lessons that we've learned from this and apply them to the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, and make sure that those folks are able to then get their money and get off the ground a lot sooner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Scott. Alderman Cicha Lopez.
Thank you, Chairwoman Dowell, for organizing this important hearing. First, I just want to remind, please, to the CDPH to let us know when these quarterly meetings take place. I know that last time we discussed this. I just want to make sure that we receive notification about the quarterly meetings that you discuss to discuss violence prevention efforts in the region, or regional meetings that I think you discussed. Want to be part of those. The other one, in terms of, I think I want to keep beating at the drum, but in terms of localizing efforts, I want to just share, know that New Life is here. I think that they provide very good insight in terms of an organization that has been doing a lot of work. Some of the things that we've been doing in partnership with New Life helps inform the local efforts. We're neighbors, we're in Little Village, Pilsen, but as many of our colleagues have talked about, these are very local efforts that need to be funded as well. So the issue that we have here, we have now several groups working in conjunction, in collaboration with some of the bigger organizations with a longer track record, however you want to put it. But we do need the funding to make sure that is put in the areas where we need them. So I think that maybe this is a suggestion. I think as we're working in partnership, already with some of the groups that are here. And again, New Life has done a wonderful job. They come regularly to our meetings and events, but the funding has to be distributed based on also the work that is happening in communities that unfortunately at this point are not included or part of this effort. So I first, wanna see if that's something that can be discussed. I know Metropolitan Family Services and other agencies receive, umbrella grants or they distribute the grants, but we being now in the second round of efforts, and a lot of organizations that are doing work in areas that need the funding are not receiving funding. So I want to see how can we address that.
So thank you for that. I think on New Life specifically, just to be clear, they are part of CP4P, as you know, and so they receive funding. MFS funds not just city, but other organizations that are part of CP4P. Separately, they receive funding directly on the victim services side. And so there's been there's this combination, again, having some flexibility in terms of how organizations are funded, and coordinating this work is sort of the essential piece. I want to make a distinction. There's the coordination that's happening on a sort of weekly or bi-weekly level that is often at the level of, practitioners around specific cases versus the larger, what does the strategy look like? Where does this come from? And I think, especially as some of this has been newer, often at the community area, we don't do a lot of reporting out right now. I'm just being honest with you, at community area level, because there's anonymity issue, there's privacy issues. But as the numbers are getting bigger, we do have metrics around which, how are some of these organizations performing, and then wanting to make sure that as new organizations are coming into this work, or more formally, perhaps, not that they haven't been doing this work, but kind of formally joining some of the structure, we make sure that those same best practices that are letting some of the perhaps larger organizations meet the metrics, that they can replicate some of that. And again, newer work here, important work here. And I do think making sure organization, big, small, no matter what, that they all can get the support to, to be in this space first, but then to grow if they want to, and be part of the various collaborations that both predate city involvement, and that we are now a funder with the county, with the state, with the AG, right? And getting all of that so everybody is rowing together is in a lot of ways one of the biggest challenges in this space.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So hopefully we can coordinate again. I think this is an offer of coordination again, especially for victim support. A lot of the expertise that New Life provides is very helpful. I hear also another colleague, Alderwoman Hurston, I think said it well. The connection to the community is important, right? We have local leaders, people who are on the ground, and I hope that maybe in these quarterly meetings or whatever the space that you recommend, we can have those conversations to make adjustments so that we can get properly funded. The other thing I wanna ask is regarding the training. I think these efforts are new for our community, are new for a lot of people. Some of it not that new, but a lot of these efforts are coming and are very effective. We're seeing just even having mentors in our schools, 30% reduction, right? In very well documented evidence. My concern, of course, is the collaboration that we get even within our own agencies, right? I tell you, and that's my question. Does the Chicago Police Department officers, do they receive training about how these programs work? And not talk about the leadership, but I think this is the second time I think we went to a public safety meeting, and we already have incidents with, unfortunately, off-duty officers who seem to have disagreements about this. So my question is, what kind of communication I also have with our departments of the effectiveness and the collaboration they must have? Because it seems counterproductive if we have, our own city employees challenging the strategies that we all trying to put together. So that is a question, again, for every department, what kind of training is out there so that we can have this collaboration?
Yeah, I would say just on that briefly, from our standpoint, this, the Community Safety Coordination Center is a new and I think critical initiative that is about making sure one hand knows what the other is doing, ensuring that CPD understands what is happening in response on the non-police side and vice versa, that residents know how to connect with police resources when they need them, and they know how to connect with non-police resources when they need them. And so again, new, and appreciate, this council in terms of recognizing that need and to fund that. But I do think the work of sort of being together in this space with a significant influx of federal funds has given us an opportunity to think and act a little bit differently. And from my standpoint, in collaboration in the way that we have done quite effectively during COVID.
I would just add that in partnership with Superintendent Brown, he has been also very receptive of allowing our community partners to come to roll calls. And so in our meetings with them, we've sent for the SCAN program, we have for roll calls for teams to present, as well as for the juvenile diversion. Additionally, we're talking through just, about the number of programs we offer to make sure that superintendent is aware, as well as all of the officers. So I think this is just, I think you hit on it, Alderman. Part of having the CSCC is to bring us together and raising questions about awareness. So work in progress, but definitely something that we all are seeing together. And I think that is also evident through the town halls we participated in over the last several weeks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Alderman Cicho Lopez. I think that was the end of your questionings, right?
Yeah, I have one last question. This is not related, is not for violence prevention, but if there's a round two, I don't want to take a lot of, if there's opportunity for one more question, this is for more DFSS and DPD.
All right, let's go, because we're getting close to 1 o'clock and we have another budget meeting at 2.
I understand. Thank you, Chairwoman. We do have this quick conversation and a tour with Commissioner Cox, as well as some representatives of DFSS. I know Commissioner Brandy, I don't think you'll be able to make it, but you send some representatives. It's about the investment in terms of addressing some of the other needs of the community, right? One of the opportunities here is potentially adding a shelter to what we have right now, one of the largest food pantries in the city. I think that this will be a good opportunity of a partnership. There seems to be TIF availability. It seems like it's a suitable location to the creation of a shelter on top of that, right? So seems the DFSS and in the area is suitable because of the number of homeless residents to come to the library, in particular in Pilsen. So we want to ask, what will be the process to make sure that these kind of projects are well coordinated between DFSS, DPD, and of course, making the TIF recommendation. I think that we have a good opportunity, but we want to know.
Alderman Cicho Lopez, I'm using Chairman's prerogative here. That is not related to the topic. It is specific to your ward. And I would ask that you have that conversation with Commissioner Kanazi and Commissioner Cox offline.
Happy to follow up with you, Alderman. Happy to follow up.
Alderman Moore, to end today's questions.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I don't want, and I'm not going to beat the horse in terms of what Alderman Leslie Hairston and everybody said in relation to the equity piece. I'm gonna ask from what Dr. Lance Williams talked about, is he a subject matter expert like himself? Because I heard people talking about there are Blacks have contracts, they are in the space and all of that. From a policy standpoint, is a person like Dr. Lance Williams at the table right now from a policy standpoint before we even start getting and identifying the dollars? I guess that's what's important to me. Can somebody answer that? Who's that subject matter expert that Black male like a Dr. Lance Williams? Who is that person?
Dr. Arwady?
I'm not entirely sure. Are you asking about at CDPH? Are you, Marlita White, who you may or may not know, is a Black woman, not a Black man, but, she leads our violence prevention efforts at CDPH. Can you just specify?
Right. So we're spending all this money, and this money is across departments, right? When it comes to violence prevention, correct?
It is, yes.
It's not just in CDPH. So
Correct.
what I guess I'm asking, or we need to be looking at for the sake of time, let's see how we can get a Dr. Lance Williams at the table across all departments where him or somebody like him, and I prefer him being in that space. And I think that's important.
I would just add, Alderman, just for your awareness, that we do have a steering committee that's set up to support community safety. It involves a diverse number of people who work not just in violence prevention, but include other representatives from the community like Dr. Carol Adams. Kim Smith from the University of Chicago Crime Lab sits on that, as does N3. And so we are consistently getting support from and guidance from a group of individuals that are working at the community level, but also with expertise, not just in violence prevention, but associated fields to help guide us in the work and the overall strategy.
Can someone take the lead and just reach out to Dr. Lance Williams and see how he can be at the table in this matter? Can somebody do that and get back to me and let me know what was said?
I'm happy to have someone on my team reach out to him and have a conversation. I don't know him personally, but I'm sure my team has interacted. But yes, we can follow up on that and then get back to you about further conversations there.
Okay, and of the 166 million, Commissioner Cox, I'm hearing that's obligated. When I hear the word obligated, it means it's been identified to go to someone, correct? Or has it just been identified to go into a certain bucket? Let me be clear on that.
Right. No, I appreciate the request. When I say obligated, is that we know what general category those funds need to be used for. Nothing is obligated because we are in the process of putting out those requests for proposals. I just know what bucket it belongs in.
I got you. It's a bucket. The 160 million has been committed to a certain bucket.
That's right. That's right.
I got it. Okay. And on the large lot program, again, since the Emanuel administration, and there's been a person in my ward who has been waiting for that. It was approved by the city, and then all of a sudden, we stopped it because of checking for environmental. So we're moving on that, and will those people be the first to get their lots approved?
I will
because this is a guy that's been dealing with this and taking care of his life first of all for years, over 15 years. And then it went through, and then all of a sudden it was held up, and I still don't know where that's at. So,
well, I'd be happy to follow up with you on that specific case. But this idea of the bulk review, it is a game changer. Will be able to now say the lots that are available in your ward for sale are clean or need further study. So that's I'd be happy to look at that specific case, but I am really excited to be able to now accelerate our process, knowing that we're dealing with clean lots. So more on that as we work through the design of the new programs.
Okay, and I just got two more short questions, Chairman. One has to do with when we're talking about the funding. So when we have organizations like ex-cons for community and social change, who I know are doing the work, and I can identify spaces in my ward that need to be managed, and I know they can manage. How can I get those funds directly to them? I know through our $100,000 that we got, it's a little, but I'm not giving them the whole 100 because we have to spread it around. So how do the other money that's in this in the ARP funding, how do we get those directly to those people that we know that's doing the job? Because I didn't understand that based on what everybody was asking. I was hearing people saying we want them in it, but I'm not sure how we get them in it. They was able to get a CEJA money, but it seems like they're having a hard time getting city money. So please help me on that.
Who's got a question for?
I'll jump in, Alderman Moore. This is Brandy Kanazi from DFSS. So for the funding that we have, agencies have to compete for it. So for our reentry program, we released RFPs through the CDBG process led through OVM last spring, and those contracts started January 1, 2022, and will go to December 31st, 2023. We do have funding that's available for reentry services. We're still developing the model. So I'll do two things. One, there's a flyer that I received today for 3 gender-based violence RFPs that we have out on the street right now. I'll share that with the entire council to make sure that you all can include that in your newsletters. And then when the funding request for the reentry services come out, I'll make sure to send that email as well. We try to make sure that as RFPs are let, we share that with you and your staff.
And I give you a call, Brandy, because it's a little more to that, but I don't want to take the time here.
Okay.
So my last one is, and I'm not sure if this is around the community coordination program. I don't know if it's a pilot is just in the 6th district or if it's anywhere else where the mental health people are working with the police to deal with mental health people. And I forget the name of that. What is the name of that team?
CARE team,
What is it?
Crisis Assistance Response and Engagement.
Okay, so who is the direct person we should be talking to? Because I'm dealing with an issue that's getting out of hand. I started with one woman, now it's getting to many, some of the homeless mental health people along 79th Street, where they're literally going into grocery stores, spitting on people, doing all this, and the police were steady calling. I'm in touch with my commander, and we are not moving the needle. And I'm up all night and day.
Please reach out to Matt Richards, the Deputy Commissioner who leads our mental health work. He's been working with a lot of aldermen on some of these really high need individuals. And we have multiple ways to be able to engage and more to come. So please
Richards
connect.
is where? He's where?
At CDPH. Matthew.Richards is the Deputy Commissioner for Behavioral Health at CDPH. And we can reach out to you and make sure you have his contact information.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Before we close, I wanted to uplift Alderman Moore's point about reaching out to Dr. Lance Williams. I'm surprised you don't know him, but Dr. Arwady, he is a nationally recognized expert on violence prevention, someone well-known in our community. And I think he could add value to the discussions and deliberations that you're having regarding the city's violence prevention strategy. So I wanted to also co-sign on my colleague's suggestion. That's one of the reasons why he was invited here today. There being no further business before the subcommittee, can I get a motion to adjourn by the affirmative? Well, before we do that, let me thank all of the panelists from each of the community development, youth services, and violence prevention. Thank you to the commissioners, Arwady, Cox, Kanazi, Budget Director Park. Thank you too for your time at this meeting. We've been going since 10, and we know that we've taken you away from some other important work that you're doing for the city of Chicago. Thank you very much. There being no further business before the subcommittee, can I get a motion to adjourn by the affirmative vote of the members present for the roll call?
So moved, Madam Chair. Alderman Wagasback.
Thank you, Alderman Wagasback. So moves. Hearing no objection, so ordered. The subcommittee on the Chicago Recovery Plan project is closed. We are now adjourned. Thank you.